Chapter 676, Wandmaker. Now you will withdraw first and back to the hill behind. Ryan said that the large grenade transformed into a fat nuclear bomb in the radiation world was uninsured and released several defensive magic on it, then turned his head, speaking to Hermione behind. Okay, be careful. After finishing speaking, Hermione teleported out of the room with two little guys, and Ryan threw the fat nuclear bomb into the open secret room entrance after opening the insurance. On that hill, boom. Just as Ryan had just teleported onto the hill bag, a huge explosion came from the house under the mountain, and then a burst of fire quickly expanded to form a mushroom cloud, and then grew into the sky. A few seconds later, the stones, wood and bricks that were blown into the sky fell again, crackling and scattered around, even causing Ryan to have a magic shield to block the falling bricks. It's fast, we're running out of time, Ryan said, teleporting to the room with the others. The stone room, which looked strong before, has disappeared, and the place has now become a big pit. After pulling out his wand and removing the ruins of those buildings, the former iron wall reappeared in front of him. It looks good. After a little inspection, Ryan discovered that the magical defense of this iron wall was weakened a lot because of the explosion. After a few seconds, the door opened with the help of Our Lady of Roses. Behind the door is a magic laboratory that is not small in size. There are a lot of lights in the room to make the whole laboratory very bright. Under the illumination of the lights, a lot of alchemy vessels made of various metal gems sparkled on the experimental table. However, this laboratory only occupies 1/3 of the room, and the other 2/3 of the room are all placed with wooden shelves, and various alchemical materials are placed on the shelves. We made a fortune this time. Ryan sighed softly after looking at the rows of shelves. He could feel that most of the things on the shelves were some good things that even the rich could not buy. But before collecting the loot, Lane found that he still had some things to do. The guy hiding behind the shelf, now come out and surrender immediately, Hermione shouted with a wand at the back of a shelf. Raise your hands over your head and slowly come out. Let me see your palms, otherwise I will kill you. Soon a rustling sound came from behind the shelf, and a few seconds later, the two seemingly emaciated old men leaned against each other and lifted their hands up from the back of the shelf. Mr. Ollivander, you are here. Ryan recognized the identity of one of the two old men who turned out from behind the shelf for the first time, although he had only seen the old man before. But as the creator of the first magic wand that he got when he entered the magic world, Ryan still remembers his appearance even after a few years. Oh, it turns out to be you. Ryan Liang, an Asian wizard who is rare in Britain. Pinewood, phoenix feathers, 12 inches long, is a magic wand that is very picky about the owner. It's also a magic wand that is very powerful for the master. Olivier narrowed his eyes and looked at Ryan. Ryan could confirm that this one was indeed Oliver, and not someone posing after drinking the compound soup. Because only Ollivander can do that, anyone who bought a wand from him can report the name of the other party and the wand used. Let's go now. The reinforcement of the mysterious man is now on the road. By the way, Mr. Ollivander, who is this gentleman beside you? Ryan pointed to the man beside Ollivander. The old man asked. The old man looked fatter than Olivier, with white hair and a fluffy big beard. It looks like a Santa. This is Grigovich, like me, a wand craftsman. It was also kidnapped here by the mysterious man, Ollivander introduced. So please take him with you, and he has helped me a lot during these days. No problem, sir. Ryan nodded and promised that in fact Ollivander would not leave such talents to Voldemort even if he didn't say so. At this time, Rose Crystal had already received the things on the shelf together with Jill, and the top alchemy test equipment placed nearby on the table, and Hermione had to take advantage of this time to stay in the basement. A lot of magic traps. After everything was packed, Ryan activated the alchemy bombs that had been placed before. Then an old man hand in hand left the basement, and Hermione also left here with two little guys. 3 minutes after they left, several black smoke appeared on the rubble and became several Death Eaters. Ha, Mrs. Lestrange. Is that what you said about the secretive, unprecedented defense of the laboratory? A witch with long hair and a scar on his face sarcastically confronted him. The witch said, "Shut up," he said, and the tall black-skinned Bellatrix directly turned his wand into a long whip and strangled the guy's neck. Then he pulled the guy to face him and said angrily to, "I will naturally admit my mistakes to the Dark Lord and take on my responsibilities. But what happened here cannot be evaluated by the garbage like you." Cough. Slightly the wizard, who was strangled by the neck, grasped the long whip with both hands, and his face had changed from white to blood red, and then slowly turned to blue. Fortunately, before he hung up, Bellatrix finally vented his anger and let go of his whip. "Get away. Get away now," Bella shouted angrily. "I'm going to investigate here who actually dared to do such a thing. When I find him out, I'll take it apart piece by piece." Looking at the angry Bella, the other black wizards hurriedly walked away from her, and everyone had a fear on their faces. Soon after they ran away, they heard the explosion sound after the spell hit the ground and Bella's crazy roar. www.mplnovel.com. But this time, the culprit of this attack has successfully returned, took their own home. After entering the living room, Ryan introduced warmly like the two old men he was pulling. "This is my current home. Even a mysterious person can't come in. You are now safe." As soon as the words fell, Ryan felt that the weight on both sides had increased sharply. He turned his head in a hurry, and found that the two masters of wand-making on both sides fainted at the same time. "Give up, don't get in the way." Hermione, standing behind Ryan, squeezed him aside unkindly, and then squatted down to release the bleeding red airflow between the two old men. "There's nothing serious about them. This is a few spells that would hurt the soul before. It is likely to be a heart curse. After a long time of overwork, the result is that after a sudden relaxation, I feel faint after being excited." After a few minutes, Hermione stood up and said to Ryan, "Now put them both in the guest room to rest for a while, and then give them the soothing incense. I think they can wake up after a good sleep, but it may take more than a month to recover." "It turns out that way." Ryan said a few words to Mr. Kyozo, who ran out, and soon 4 or 5 Mr. Kyozong rushed out of the basement with a stretcher to take the two old men lying on the carpet. "Ryan believes that these robots can take care of the two magic wand makers. I think we have to take a break too." Ryan watched the robot leave and turned to Hermione. "Anyway, counting the loot and figuring out what happened in the basement is too late to do it tomorrow. Just to relax this evening." Chapter 677, Doubt and News. "Good morning, my brother." Early the next morning, Ryan was awakened by Rose Crystal's crisp voice. "I suggest you better hurry up now, because it is almost lunchtime." "What, have I slept for so long?" Ryan hurriedly sat up and turned to look out of the window. It turned out that the sunlight outside was already very bright. A bunch of golden sunlight shined into the bedroom from the gap of the curtain, forming a thin beam of light in the room. "Maybe it was too tired yesterday." Ryan smiled self-deprecatingly, then got up from the bed and began to clean up. "Right, little Rose. Where is Hermione?" "She was up half an hour ago." "I didn't alarm you to go out of the room to see if you were asleep." Rose Crystal shrugged. "She should be preparing breakfast now." "Oh, really?" Ryan shook his head helplessly and then quickly packed up and went downstairs. When he came to the restaurant, he saw Hermione sitting at the table waiting for him. "Breakfast." "It's really trouble you," Ryan said, apologizing to Hermione when he sat down at the table. "You should wake me up when you got up just now. You can't keep you busy by doing breakfast." "But I didn't actually do anything." Hermione smiled and spread her hand. "This is at home. I don't need to cook by myself. Just go to the kitchen and tell Mr. Kyozo what to eat in the morning." "It turns out that way." Ryan used a fork to fork a piece of bacon and ate it, then said vaguely, "Since we had this family, the time we lived here can be counted with one hand, so I forgot about it." "It doesn't matter. This is just a little thing." Hermione waved her hand, and then continued. "By the way, yesterday we rescued the hostages. I just checked. Their condition is much less than that of the one who just returned yesterday. If there is no accident, they can wake up in 3 or 4 hours." "This sounds like a good idea," Lane said heartily. "At least I think it should be very important for the mysterious person to create such a large laboratory, so if you can figure out what this laboratory is doing, it should be very useful for us." "You are right, but there is one thing you might not have thought of." Hermione lowered her fork and nodded in agreement. "At least in my opinion, this laboratory may be more important than you think." "Oh? Let's talk about it," Ryan asked with some curiosity. He just thought it was important to have so many precious materials and so many places to guard, but he didn't have time to think down seriously. So after hearing Hermione's analysis, he stopped eating with interest and prepared to listen to her opinion. "That's the case, do you think that although there are a lot of guards and there are enough magic circles to help, but they are all isolated in front of that iron wall? It's a bit strange." Hermione looked at Ryan and said to know that the two magic wand makers we rescued were previously taken by force. They wouldn't worry about their actions under normal circumstances. So why is there a wall between the guard and the two magic wand makers? It's not going to be personally monitored. This is indeed a suspicious place. Ryan nodded slightly, because the group of Death Eaters seemed a bit unreasonable. Under normal circumstances, such unreliable personnel must at least be kept under surveillance. It is a bit strange to stand outside the door like a Death Eater and not take a glance. I think the things inside are either very dangerous or very important to the mysterious person. It should be very important, Hermione said. I don't think that the mysterious person is the kind of person who values the lives of others. Even if he is to the Death Eaters under his, he will not put their lives in his own eyes. What you said makes sense. Lane nodded. But we don't need to guess these things anymore. After a while, the two old gentlemen who we rescued yesterday should wake up and they should know what the mysterious man is doing. Time was boring after eating, so Ryan twisted the radio set on the table and tried to hear if there was any new news. These days they have been busy, and at the same time, they have imposed an interference spell on them to keep them secret. Therefore, after they left Hogwarts Castle, they almost cut off all the news, so they urgently need to know what happened recently. The first few radio stations existed originally, of course. Now they have all fallen to Voldemort's side. So it's either whitewashed playing music, or a new decree chanting various London Ministry of Magic in a rigid tone. Of course, these laws are full of discrimination. Other than that, there were some wanted orders, and Ryan just heard his share. His reward is 10,000 gallons, which was added after the last battle at Hogsmeade, and is now second only to the reward of the so-called conspiracy usurper Professor Dumbledore. As the list was recited, they heard many familiar names. For example, Harry is now rewarded with 6,000 gallons, while Hermione has only 3,000 gallons. It's really boring content, and it's illogical. Hermione sat on the sofa after the wanted list was finished. Let's listen to our radio station. The show made by the Ministry of Magic in London is really nothing audible. There are still some uses, at least to let us know who the Death Eaters are targeting now, Lane said, tapping his wand on the radio to change the channel. Of course, the things in it are not necessarily accurate. For example, your reward is only half of Harry's. It is not reasonable. At least in terms of your damage to the group of Death Eaters, is 7,000 gallon more reasonable. I wouldn't be bored to be better than this number, Hermione said, lifting her chin slightly. I just think that if these wanted amounts are more accurate, I can roughly analyze part of the enemy's movements and send them to our personnel. A warning has been issued. What you said makes sense. www.mtlnovel.com. But we can listen to other news now. Ryan finally changed the channel after a toss for half a day and changed a familiar voice from the speaker. It's great to meet the audience again, and you are welcome to listen to the Hogwarts Lights radio station. I am Fred Weasley, and beside me is George Weasley. Good afternoon everyone. Good noon. George's voice came out, but because the twins' voice was not as high as the resolution of the external radio, Ryan did not hear the difference between the two. First of all, I need to broadcast a piece of good news. Fred said, it is now possible to confirm that all the Death Eaters who made the Poker Village massacre after the 4 days of attack on Hogsmeade have now been killed. We hope this will make it stand the wizards on the mysterious side can wake up in time to stop the massacre of innocent people. In addition, we call on all listeners to help nearby muggles when possible. For example, you can cast a protective spell on the muggle residents on your street. These simple measures may save many lives. Yes, we don't require everyone to be a hero, but sometimes helping others is just a relief. George added, don't believe the so-called sorcerer first that is circulated in the dark. The sorcerer first is the first step of discrimination, then it will easily become pureblood first, and finally become an evil Death Eater. Remember, whether it is a wizard, a muggle or any magical creature, life is equal, they are equally precious, and they are all worth protecting. It seems that the radio station is doing well, at least it has played a role in publicity. Listening to the content of the radio, Ryan nodded approvingly. Chapter 678, Oliver. Just as they were drinking black tea while listening to the radio, Mr. Cleverman flew down the stairs. It came to Ryan where they sat and said in a unique mechanical voice, yesterday the guest named Oliver is now awake and he hopes to see the person who rescued him from that prison yesterday. Okay, let's go up here. Ryan nodded at the tumbling robot, then waved his wand to turn off the radio and stood up with Hermione and walked upstairs. Following the stairs all the way up to the second floor, I walked a few steps into the corridor on the left, and the brown wooden door of the guest room appeared in front of them. Ryan stepped forward to the door and knocked lightly on the door, and answered them with a faint please come in. After opening the door, I could see a wooden single bed in the room by the window, and Ollivander was now lying on the bed halfway on the pillow. At this time, the curtains were pulled apart halfway, and with the help of sunshine, Ryan could see that his current state was much worse than it was then. He looked haggard, all the bones on his face protruded, and his skin was yellow and yellow. The big silver eyes are deep in the eye sockets, and they look even bigger. The hands on the thin quilt look like skeletons. According to Hermione's inspection yesterday, Ollivander has been out of the sun for at least a year and has been tortured several times. This is why he now looks so bad. Ollivander kept looking at the small garden downstairs through the window before they came in, but now he turned his head to look at them with silver eyes. Mr. Ollivander, I'm glad to see you awake, but I think you'd better rest, because your physical condition is not very good now. Ryan advised Ollivander lying on the bed halfway to. My dear children, Ollivander's voice was weak. You rescued us. I thought we would die there. How can I thank you? How do you? Not enough. We are very happy to help you. Hermione said, as long as it can weaken the mysterious person or the Death Eater, we are willing to do it, but you are still very weak. You don't have to call us to thank. Of course. I asked you to come not specifically to thank you, but to tell you what the mysterious man caught me and Grigovic, and I think this should be helpful to defeat the mysterious person. This is really good news, Leon and Hermione said after looking at each other. After we entered the house where you were yesterday, I found out that you seem to be making something through the seized loot. Yes, we are indeed making something. Ollivander nodded slowly. The mysterious man asked us to make a wand that could defeat Principal Dumbledore. Because his wand has been completely destroyed. Ollivander lowered his voice and said, so he blamed all the reasons for the previous failures, so he kidnapped me at that time and let me do it for him. A powerful wand. Ryan suddenly thought of the purple jellywood wand belonging to Voldemort that he burned with wildfire and Peter on the day of Voldemort's resurrection. It seems that this should be the first time after Voldemort's resurrection. So, Did you make that wand? Hermione asked. It's the magic wand that the mysterious man demands. Of course not, otherwise I won't be like this, Olivier said after a bitter smile. In this whole year, I have experimented with thousands of wands and rod cores, and even used some collections of pure-blood families, such as the bones of titans, and then the real dragon scales. I swear I have never seen these things before. But I still don't know why I can't make the wand that the mysterious man needs. Ollivander seemed a bit desperate. I have tried all the magic wand making techniques, even the oldest one. The made things do indeed fit the mysterious man, but I don't know why I still can't reach the old one. Speaking of which, Ollivander's voice suddenly became smaller. What's old, sir? Seeing Ollivander seem to be lost in contemplation, Ryan had to interrupt his contemplation with a loud voice. Where did I just say? Oh, yes, it's an ancient wand. After being reminded, an excited spirit of Olivier woke up from contemplation. Then he leaned back up the bed and said, more than a month ago, the mysterious man took out the most powerful wand I have made, but when he returned, he anxiously tortured me with a drill heart curse all night. I'm sorry, sir, I think that's because I'm trying to cover Harry Potter's confrontation with the mysterious man, Ryan said in a somewhat guilty tone. After all, the old man was tortured because of his victory. Child, didn't you lie to me? Ollivander's eyes widened, and he couldn't take care of the topic just now. If I heard correctly, you just said that you and the mysterious person had confronted each other more than a month ago. Not only that, Mr. Oliver, Hermione said. Just a while ago, Ryan stopped another mysterious conspiracy in Hogsmeade and even forced the mysterious man back. Hermione, you are a little touted. Ryan shook his head with a smile. It is the Principal Dumbledore who really repels the mysterious person. If he spends too much time with me, the principal will quickly come over. This is already amazing, boy. Ollivander said. It is a miracle in itself to be able to confront the mysterious people head on at your age. This should be the best news I have heard today. The news made Ollivander very excited, and he could only continue with the topic he had just waited for a few minutes. If things are the same as what you just said, then after the mysterious man once again failed, he began to ask his subordinates about various powerful magic props, and then grabbed Gregovich a week ago. www.mtlnovel.com. Speaking of here, Ollivander paused. Gregovich was arrested because the mysterious man found out that he had the strongest wand ever, the Death Stick, the Rod of Destiny or the Old Wand. So I will go to him. After tortured the whereabouts of the Old Wand, the mysterious man locked him and me out of a certain idea. Since then, he has asked us to make a wand that is comparable to an old wand. This is a place I can't understand, Ollivander said in a confused tone. The history of the Old Wand runs through the entire history of magic. Although there is an interruption in the middle, it will always reappear. It is certain recognizable characteristics that people who have studied wand science will recognize. There are some written records, some it's very obscure, and I have studied with other wand makers. Those records have some authenticity. So I know very well that this wand is the night chick tail feather used, the body of the elderberry. Speaking of here, Ollivander's eyes shone brightly. This is a powerful combination, but it is definitely not top-notch in terms of materials. It can even be said that this combination was only slowly killed by those excellent and rare wand materials more than 1,500 years ago with the disappearance of those powerful magical creatures. It was developed by people. I can't figure out why such a combination is more powerful than the old methods I used to make those powerful and ancient materials. I think that in addition to the materials, the production method of any magic props cannot be ignored. Thinking of his own production process of Lady Virgin, Ryan seemed to want to understand what. If I am not wrong, the reason why you can't make a wand comparable to the old one is because your own level is not enough. Chapter 679, Wands and Loot. Child, although you saved me and gave me a second life, but you can't insult my ability in this respect. After hearing Ryan's words, Ollivander choked a few times, and then looked a little bit, said angrily, our family retains the oldest wand-making technology in almost all of Western Europe. These technologies include all the technologies from the era of mythical heroes to the present. So I don't think that in this aspect of technology, I am the wand-making master who made old ones. How bad is it? After talking, Ollivander stared at Ryan with wide eyes, expressing his dissatisfaction with Ryan's words just now. As a wand maker, Ollivander has his own pride. He will not let others downplay his craft at will. You don't believe that fairy tale? Ollivander said as if suddenly remembering something. I can assure you that the so-called of death made the three holy devices of death is just a legend. When he was imprisoned 2 days ago, Gregovich told me that he had an old wand. According to the results of his inspection, it can be determined the magic wand is indeed made by a human wizard, and it is not a miracle of a god. Although I don't agree with the style, I believe that there will be no wrong judgment in this regard. I know this, Ryan said to Ollivander. I just said that to make a wand like an old wand, you have to reach a certain level of strength. If the strength is not enough, even if it is correct, cannot make that kind of powerful wand. Strength? After listening to this sentence, Oliver had to fall into contemplation. As a wand maker, his own strength is not particularly powerful. It's just that he never had to think about his own strength when making ordinary wands, so he never thought about it in this direction before. It should be strength. Ryan stared at Ollivander's eyes and nodded solemnly, and then summoned Our Lady of Roses. Look at this and you will know. Is this alchemist's stone? As a magic wand maker, Ollivander naturally understands alchemy. So after checking the jewel in Ryan's hand a little, I soon figured out what it was. If I remember correctly, Nicole May had an alchemist in his hand. But since that one was destroyed, there should be no alchemy in Europe. It turned out to be true. Ryan raised his eyebrows. But I recreated this kind of thing. In the process, I also found that my personal strength is very important for the production of these special items. Just like the production of alchemy stone, I can find how to make it even at Mull. Alchemy stone, but not many people can make it, because there are too few people who meet the refining requirements. You should be right. Ollivander, who wanted to hold on to his own opinion, could only admit that he was unable to make a powerful wand like an old wand after seeing the Virgin Rose in front of him. But you'd better pay attention. I think the Dark Devil's search for powerful magic items is not just for defeating you or Principal Dumbledore, Ollivander said after frowning. According to what he did before, I think he feels like he thinks that his strength has reached a perfect level, so he is now looking for various magic props and even things in myths and legends because he believes that these things will make him change. It's impeccable. It's a strange idea. Hermione didn't quite understand. The magic wand is just a magic wand. Why do some people feel that these powerful props can make people more powerful than before? I think that's because he feels that he has gone far enough on the road to conquer death, and has even reached the extreme. Lane explained to Hermione through the Phoenix brand, at least in terms of Horcrux. He couldn't cut more soul fragments, which might make him feel that his potential had been tapped to the extreme, so now he began to pursue external power to improve himself. And the first 2 times I used the power of the Holy Mother of Rose should also remind him of the importance of external power. But you obviously aren't. Hermione was puzzled. She knows that Ryan's Madonna Rose is not the same as the magic stone, and it cannot be regarded as an external force. And the Deathly Hallows is not a concept at all. But he doesn't know the mysterious man. Ryan blinked at Hermione mischievously after conveying this sentence through the Phoenix brand. After interacting with Hermione, Lane turned to Ollivander. Thank you very much for the news. They will provide enough help for our next move. We will leave now and give you a good rest. Yes, I really need to take a good rest. The torture of the Dark Lord before me was so powerful, the hard curse. You don't know. We know. Ryan nodded seriously. I really know. Please take a rest. If you have any requirements, you can order those metal robots to do it. They will complete your orders. Thank you for telling us all. After finishing, Ryan and Hermione stepped back out of the room, and closed the door. The following afternoon, Ryan and they started to clean up the pile of magical materials from the basement in the living room. Previously, under Voldemort's call, many pureblood families took out their bottom of the box. This also allowed Ryan to find a lot of good things that he hadn't even seen in a school library. I finally know why the mysterious man didn't allow the dead to enter that house, Hermione said, holding up a slap-sized amber, which was covered with a drop of sky-blue liquid. But the magic is that there is a layer of hoarfrost on the appearance of amber. There are too many precious treasures in that house. With the suspicious personality of the mysterious person, he will never let others have the opportunity to apologize for those treasures. Besides, the mysterious man's wand was made there. Ryan also picked up a silver smelt made by a goblin and looked at the sunlight outside the window. The magic wand is equivalent to the second life of the wizard, so the mysterious person will definitely not let his subordinates see this process. If they guessed right, Ollivander they really made a wand comparable to the old magic wand, waiting for their absolute its killing and killing. This large pile of treasures, they cleaned up for half a day, and it was not until late at night that they were finally placed in different categories. In the process, Ryan discovered that the extraordinary power of Harry Potter before this world should be more prosperous than it is now. The rich magic contained in the unknown claws, feathers, or scales contained in various containers can explain some problems. www.mplnovel.com How powerful these magical creatures should be when they are alive. Hermione sighed after discovering the energy attached to these things. Maybe at that time the world was like the Silver Moon City we visited last time, gestating a powerful magical civilization. But that world is not friendly to most people. Ryan had to point out this. For example, the last time we went to Silver Moon City was already the safest city in the area, but if an ordinary person left the city wall to protect it, it would be very life-threatening. You are right, so now this is the best. Hermione shrugged her shoulders here. As for this magical material, anyway, we have so many worlds, we can always find this level of production. The world of materials. You're right, but it's not easy even if those worlds want to put together so many top-notch materials at one time. At least at the time, in the bustling place like Silver Moon City, I've only seen them in the treasure trove of Elastro. So many things. It seems that this time the mysterious person has emptied the bottom of those pureblood families. But now they are all ours. Hermione smiled broadly. It is our duty to save the innocent and stop the atrocities. But it would be better if there were more windfalls. Don't think about this. Lane smiled and shook his head. There will not be too many of these pureblood families, so I don't think there will be any big gains like today. I know, But people always have to be a little optimistic. Maybe someday the mysterious person's brain will have a problem, and then gather a batch of treasures. Hermione stood up after saying, "Okay, let's go to dinner. Eat dinner today, it is too late." Chapter 680, Travel. For the next few days, Ryan and Hermione stayed at the manor and went nowhere. On the one hand, they started to make a variety of magic props that may be used later. On the other hand, they helped the two wand masters recover their bodies. Regardless of whether it is day or night, Ryan, they wake up on time like an alarm clock, eat, work, fight to practice, and sleep. Although life is so monotonous in this way, it is very fulfilling. Just as the week was about to pass, the two wand-making masters also recovered to the point where they could get out of bed and move around. But when Ryan proposed to send them to Hogsmeade, they were rejected on the spot. "I would never go to Hogsmeade," said Grigovich with a strong accent in English. "You know, wand-making masters like me are all concerned about the protection of the Ministry of Magic in various countries. Even if it is so, I will be able to be taken away by the Dark Lord from layers of protection. So I think that the half of the Ministry of Magic in your north can't protect me. Am I not?" Ollivander groaned. Diagon Alley is not a remote place. After the mysterious man was resurrected, the patrol was strengthened there, but in the end, I was not taken directly from the store. "So where are you going next?" Hermione asked, looking distressed. "Mr. Grigovich, do you need us to send you back to Bulgaria's hometown?" "But we don't have that time and energy for the time being." No, Grigovich waved his hand. "We have just discussed, and the result of a discussion is that we hope to live with you before the end of this war. Of course, we will pay for the accommodation, and we will never be stingy in terms of money. In addition, we are willing to give you some of the materials and books we collected as a gift." Ryan has no doubts about what he said. As a wonder maker with a long history, it is certainly very sufficient in the collection of various magic materials and knowledge, even more abundant than the collection of normal pureblood families. So they said that it is absolutely possible to come up with materials and books as a gift of thanks. But Ryan wondered why they had to stay in their own manor. Know that this manor was built entirely in the style of moles. Those wizards who came from the magic world are often not used to life here. At the same time, he didn't think he could have the prestige of President Dumbledore, so that these two masters could stay. "But Hogsmeade is now guarded by Professor Dumbledore," Lane asked tentatively. "So it is definitely not safer than the Ministry of Magic full of ghosts in the past." "Albus is indeed very strong, but there are many people he needs to protect," Ollivander said in a hoarse voice. "People like us who are targeted by the Dark Lord cannot guarantee safety, because we cannot be under the protection of President Dumbledore at any time." "Yes," Grigovich added, looking at Ryan. "At least we think it's safest to live in your manor. You know, in the last war, the Dark Lord didn't even find Nicholas Ver, the manor where the Lamers live. We believe that as an alchemist as powerful as Nicholas, the Dark Lord cannot enter your manor. Of course, we are not simply taking refuge here," Grigovich said. "Although I have been retired for several years, if you can provide us with materials, we can produce for you during this time." "Wand. If this is the case, you are welcome to live here." Ryan and Hermione made a decision after looking at each other. Many of the wizards rescued and fled from the previous period lost their wands, and the number of such wizards is likely to increase in the future. Most of these wizards now use second-hand wands of poor quality, while the other part simply cannot find a wand available. The lack of magic wands has become a well-known thing. Even Ryan and Hermione both traveled to the anchor point more than 10 kilometers away 3 days ago and mailed to Hogsmeade the wands that had been renovated and were seized in the previous battle. So when the two masters of wand-making were willing to continue working on wand-making, Ryan decided to leave them both. With their help, Hogsmeade's lack of wands should be greatly relieved. "I think the wand-making props should be available now," Hermione said, pulling her finger. "The last time we evacuated the basement when we rescued you, there were the best wand-making equipment in it. In addition, some of the seized materials are also commonly used materials made by magic wands. I think you can use them first. If you have a room, the spare alchemy room upstairs is just right for you to use." Ryan went on to say, "We will arrange the things for you today, and then go to Hogsmeade to purchase a batch of raw materials for you." After setting up the two magic wand makers, Lane decided to go to Hogsmeade. On the one hand, it is to purchase various raw materials. On the other hand, it is to deliver the recently made things to those who need it. "It feels cold." As soon as she left the door of the room, Hermione tightened her robe subconsciously. This week they didn't even leave the room. Even the combat exercises were done in the Lord of the Rings world. "So as soon as I stepped out of the room, I realized that the weather had changed. It's October, and it's rainy again. How could it not be cold?" Lane said, adding a warming spell to Hermione and herself, and then left the manor with her using their unique teleportation spell. The two magic wand masters were right before. Ryan's manor is indeed one of the best in the European magic world in this state of full defense, and this powerful defense comes from the manor's special magic defense system. The place where the normal wizards lived, no matter what the defense would leave a passage for people to come and go, like a wall with windows and doors. However, as a result, These channels often become weak points in the defense system. Ryan's manner completely blocked all external communication channels under the current state of high vigilance. For other wizards, this kind of defense is meaningless, because no one can enter and no one can defend the location. People simply cannot live in it. They used this method because on the one hand, their teleportation magic can bypass almost all the magic defenses in the world, and can normally enter and exit under these defenses. On the other hand, they have multiple worlds that can provide logistic help, and can survive for a long time without communicating with the outside world on the road. Looking at the village from their foothold, we can find that almost all the traces of the last war have been erased. Only the bricks and tiles of different colors and the burnt traces on the big tree at the entrance of the village also tell the story of the last war. Fierce. As they walked down the road to the entrance of the village, they found that the village now had a wall on the periphery like Hogwarts. As they approached the entrance and exit, they were stopped by a patrol, and the leader was actually the old acquaintance Cedric. "Lane, Hermione, I'm very happy to see you. Now I'd like to show you your pass." Cedric greeted him with a smile, and several patrols behind him looked at them with their magic wands in their posts. "We left more than a week ago, and we don't know anything about the pass," Ryan said dumbfounded. "At least the wall didn't even exist when they left." "Yes," Cedric nodded. "Then do you have any way to prove your identity? If not, I think I might need to call out Professor Dumbledore." "No need to trouble Headmaster Dumbledore," Ryan said with a wave of his hand. A pair of pink wings appeared behind him, and then his feet floated off the ground. "Do you think this is enough? You have to know that the only wizard who could fly without tools was only a Voldemort, so now Ryan easily proves his identity with these wings." "Okay, you go in." Cedric signaled them to go in. The players behind him also put away their wands. "For a while, remember to go to the Ministry of Magic to get a pass." Chapter 681, Conversation in the Store. After entering the town of Hogsmeade, Lane discovered that the town was still as lively as it was in the past. Especially after a large number of wizards fled here, the local market has prospered a lot, which made Ryan spend a little effort to squeeze out of the crowd and rush to the Weasley joke shop. The layout of the Weasley joke shop is completely different from before. The various joke products that used to be the protagonist are now pitifully squeezed in the corner of the shop. The windows and shelves that were vacated are now filled with all kinds of defense props, from defense suits to special smoke bombs, from decoy bombs to elementary magic simple tutorials. "Good morning, Sirius." When he came to the door of the store's backyard warehouse, Ryan encountered an unexpected person. "I remember you eras should be very busy. Why are you here today?" "I don't want to, but this is the task assigned by the Ministry of Magic," Sirius said with a lift of the box in his hand. Ryan saw that the brown suitcase was wrapped in bronze at all 8 corners, and it looked very strong. On the front of the box is a golden capital letter M, and in the middle of the letter M there is a raised wand. "Oh, does the Ministry of Procurement buy?" Hermione looked at this box with the Ministry of Magic logo on it with interest. "If you guess right, this should be a space box." "What are you going to buy this time?" "A large number of defense items. At least 100 bronze bracelets need to be purchased." Sirius turned his head to Ryan. "Ryan, these props you made are really useful. They have saved more than one life in the recent period. But the problem now is that there is a shortage of stock in your shop." "You don't have to worry about this," Lane said, taking the space bag from his waist and shaking it. "I just made a batch of new products, and the rest of the store should meet your needs." After talking about it, he took out one bracelet after another from his pocket and placed it on a side table. It wasn't until Sirius took out the 37th bracelet that he nodded to indicate that it was enough. "I remember you bought it last time," asked Sirius Ryan, looking at the bracelets in the box. "Why do you need so much this time? Do you have so many people using these things?" "Absolutely enough manpower." Sirius recounted all the bracelets, and then closed the box. "Don't you know that these bracelets have become consumables? Be aware that both Aurors and Blowers are now not only flooded with novices, but also overloaded. In this way, they will make more mistakes in battle than before. In this case, the previous batch of bracelets will naturally wear out quickly, but correspondingly, we can use the limited manpower now to complete various complex tasks, and at the same time promote the rapid growth of everyone. So overall the consumption of these bracelets is still worthwhile. The only bad thing is that you need to trouble you." "This is what I should do." Ryan nodded. "After all, life is the most important thing. Being able to exchange supplies for life is always a very worthwhile thing." "Yes, I think so too. Also, thank you for reporting the price to the Ministry of Magic as a cost price, so that more frontline fighters can have enough defense." After that, Sirius took the box to the store. "Go ahead." "Okay, goodbye. I'm going back to the Ministry of Magic to get back to life now. By the way, the thing you did in the London Magic Department before is indeed beautiful." As the Auror of the Ministry of Magic, Sirius can see a lot of news that outsiders cannot see. "Naturally, I also know who was the one who hanged the street lights from those black wizards." For Sirius, who lived in the Black family since childhood, This method of returning teeth to teeth is the most suitable for him. Good luck. Ryan watched Sirius carrying the box into the front room. I have to say that this job really suits Sirius, especially as a shareholder of the joke shop. He can go directly to the warehouse to pick up what he needs and go to the front checkout. In this way, a lot of time can be saved, and at the same time, the efficiency is much higher when taking things. After saying goodbye to Sirius, Ryan took Hermione upstairs to the shop. At this time, George was making some kind of potion upstairs, and after seeing Ryan coming in, he extinguished the fire placed under the still. "Are you okay to stop making this? Won't you waste this pot of medicine?" Hermione, looking at George who stopped making potions, pointed to the pile of bottles and jars in front of them with some concern. "Of course not, and my level of making finished potions is a waste," George said with a smile. "So I'm just doing some deep processing of some magic potion raw materials. For example, I was distilling white fresh essential oil just now. This is one of the essential raw materials for making white fresh essence. I hope these semi-finished raw materials can help you make more potion." "Then thank you." Ryan nodded, then handed over the space bag. "This is a new batch of protective props I made. You can put it on the shelf now. When I just came over, I saw a lot of places on the shelf with labels saying out of stock." "It's out of stock." George took the space bag and opened it. He said, "Recent conflicts have continued, so many things that are not normally used have become consumables. In addition, ordinary people also hope to be able to get some magic props for self-defense. So all our stuff about black magic defense is selling very well now." After talking about it, he took out a crystal bottle as large as a thermos. The crystal bottle was reinforced by some steel and silver frames, and contained some emerald green liquid like a flowing emerald. "Ah, is this a potion of intoxication?" George said after he opened the bottle and smelled it with a fan. "The Ministry of Magic and the Phoenix Society charge as much as we have for this potion, because we now need this kind of potion that can play a part in the most insane spell." Speaking of which, George seemed agitated and his face flushed. "That group of Death Eaters www.mplnovel.com and some of the evil men in the Ministry of Magic in London have been abusing the heart curse. Moody brought a group of Rus to capture a pure mana of the blood family, rescued a dozen people from the inside. As a result, each of them was inadequately tortured by the heart-shaping curse. Can you believe it?" George waved his hand excitedly. One of the boys was only 6 years old, and the group of Death Eaters could use the heart drill. The only reason they did it was that it was fun to do it. "Really?" Hermione covered her mouth with her hands. "So, how are those evildoers now?" "All ran away," George said, looking very upset. Of course, this is not to blame Moody. They had 7 Death Eaters in the house, and Moody had only 5 of them. After rushing into the manor at that time, they were withdrawn to protect the hostages after they learned to save the hostages. Power to block the fleeing Death Eaters. "That's right." Ryan nodded slightly. "Anyway, saving innocent people is more important than punishing criminals. By the way, what is the situation of the rescued hostages now?" "It's okay." George smiled. "Fortunately, not every Death Eater's heart-drilling curse can be so effective, and our rescue and treatment are more timely. So although these hostages have a few injuries, they should not be permanent." "Injury?" "Of course. The coagulant and calming incense you developed played an indispensable role in the treatment process." "That would be great." Ryan pointed to the space bag in George's hand. "I have prepared 10 bottles of this intoxicating potion, which should be enough for people who need to use it now." Chapter 682, Smooth Plan. After spending more than 10 minutes, Lane finally counted and handed over the magic items he had brought before. There are many kinds of magic props. In addition to the magic props used for magic defense, there are some new offensive props this time. "What's this?" George took a slim velvet-covered box from the space bag, and opened it to take out the contents. "It looks a bit like a wand." "Stop it." Ryan hurried forward to split his hand and took the wand off. After putting it back in the box, he looked up at George. "Please, if you see magic items you haven't seen before, it's better to ask me, otherwise you may hurt yourself." "Do you mean this is not an ordinary wand?" George asked, looking at the small blue box in Ryan's hand. "Is it similar to the fake wand I sold with Fred before?" "It's a bit like, but it's not the same thing," Lane said, taking a wand that was previously used as a test article from another space bag in his arms. At this time, George discovered that although this wand looks like a normal wand, it looks more gorgeous than the ordinary wand. The surface is inlaid with a mysterious pattern of silver threads and a tiny crystal. "It really looks a lot prettier than a normal wand," George commented. "But at this time, although many people need a wand, I don't think this gorgeous, pure-blood family-style wand can be welcomed by the hemp wizards who have lost the wand. And I don't see anything about this wand special." Ha ha ha. Hermione could not help laughing when she looked at the wand in front of George's solemn comment. After the laughter stopped a little, she said to George, "I really didn't expect this thing to hide your observations. In fact, this wand is a consumable, and it can automatically cast magic." "Does magic work automatically?" George opened his mouth in surprise. "I only know that some magic items can automatically release magic when they need to be used, but I have never heard of a magic wand that can automatically release magic. Accurately speaking, this should be a truncated version of a semi-automatic wand, because although it does not need to cast spells, it still requires the user to mentally lock the target of the spell. In addition, it can only use one kind of magic. Ryan shrugged, shrugging his shoulders. I must say that the real auto-casting props are made. It's really difficult. Even if it's really made, almost no one can afford it. Even in this case, this wand is very powerful. George looked at the wand in Ryan's hand with awe. What surprised me the most is that you can still mass-produce this thing. Okay, let's try this wand now. Ryan looked at George and seemed to start praising the wand and interrupted George quickly. I have to show you this wand first. Power. Only in this way can you introduce its role to those who need this thing and develop a suitable method of use. Open the fire. After coming to the yard, Ryan raised the wand and aimed at a stone in the middle of the yard. He instantly fired a magical energy missile from the head of the wand, and then a baseball was exploded on the stone. The size of the pit. Pure magical energy. After a few minutes or study, George also imitated Lane using the wand to make a pit of the same size on the stone, and then he took the wand and looked closely. Although it is not very aggressive, it can play a very good effect in the Battle of Wizards. Especially after using pure magic energy, it can effectively kill and destroy most of the magical defense methods now. In short, it is a magical prop that is very suitable for combat. So how much do you think the price of this thing is appropriate? Ryan asked after briefly introducing the characteristics of this thing. In fact, this wand is a magically modified arcane missile wand. After getting this technology from Silvermoon City in the last trip, Ryan tried to restore a series of magical technologies in Silvermoon City. However, technical restoration is a very complicated process under different world backgrounds, not to mention that the magic level of that world last time is much higher than that of this world. This led to the fact that after such a long period of research, the arcane missile wand, which was not very complicated in that world, became the first magic prop that could be produced in batches using local raw materials among all the technologies obtained in that world, and it was comparable to the original. For example, the magic wand made here is also quite different from its prototype. For pricing, 20 magic items are stored in each wand. The wand will be scrapped after use. You tell me that it costs about 12 gallons. George tapped his chin with his finger. I think the price of 30 gallons is more appropriate, because you underestimate the complexity of making such magic props. However, I think the specific pricing will not be finalized until Fred returns. It's okay, I'm not in a hurry anyway. Ryan asked George after shaking his hand that he didn't hurt him on the matter. By the way, why are you alone in the shop? Where did Fred and Penlo go? Penlo went to the wolf planting base in Northern Europe today to buy. George explained, because the sales of magic props almost emptied our inventory, and the workshop on the other side of the town now needs more raw materials to maintain production. As for Fred, he went to Hogwarts today to find Hagrid. You know, Hagrid can often find some good things in the Forbidden Forest by accident. After discussing with Dumbledore and Hagrid before, we can now get some materials that are harder to obtain from Hagrid every once in a while. Seriously, I hope they come back quickly, and now they work alone in the store, even if it's just one morning. Tired. It turns out that way. Ryan nodded, and now Weasley's joke shop is far less crowded than in the past. Most of the former shop assistants now work in the new Ministry of Magic, because before, Ryan recruited and trained a large number of hemp seed wizards for their big plans. At the time this was just to improve the overall level of hemp seed wizards, so that they could be able to fight for their dues when the time came. Right. But Ryan did not expect that the opportunity came so fast at this time, nor did he think that there were so many people in the magic world who opposed the establishment of a new order after the end of the last war. www.mplnovel.com. The order returned to the state in the past. This also led to Voldemort being able to seize the only opportunity that Dumbledore was unable to escape while Professor Dumbledore is still alive. Certain advantages. For many reasons, President Dumbledore could not recapture the Ministry of Magic in a short period of time, and the war became longer and longer. Under such circumstances, Hogsmeade Ministry of Magic was established. Because a large number of pureblood faction wizards chose to stand on the side of the Ministry of Magic in London, resulting in an extreme shortage of personnel, the Ministry of Magic recruited a large number of personnel after it stabilized. And this just gave Ryan a chance to start acting, a chance for more hemp seed wizards to get a better job, and then to get the status and right to speak. Unsurprisingly, these hemp wizards who have been trained in the joke shop for several years have almost successfully passed the examination and were recruited by magic. It was a good thing for Ryan and they, but there were fewer people in the corresponding joke shop. Fortunately, after the outbreak of the war, the main business of the joke shop was changed to the production of magic props related to the war, and the shop in Diagon Alley was closed. This makes the store barely operational. However, the lack of personnel is still a very troublesome problem. Although some new recruits are recruited from the escaped personnel, the lack of personnel will cause the store to run poorly until the training of these new recruits is qualified. Then we won't disturb you. Finally, after instructing George to help collect materials for wand making, Ryan and they quickly left. After George waved his hand, he began to refine the essential oil. Chapter 683. Goodbye Hagrid. Where are we going next? After walking out of the Weasley joke shop, Hermione turned to ask Ryan next to him, are you going to buy the raw materials for the magic wand? Yes, I think now we have to go to the Ministry of Magic to apply for a batch of materials. After going back, the two wand-making masters will be able to start work, Lane said along with Hermione to the hill where the Ministry of Magic is. After the establishment of the Hogsmeade Ministry of Magic, with Dumbledore's suggestion, most of the raw materials needed for the war are now under control. If it is only small-scale procurement, the problem is not big, but large-scale procurement like them must go to the Ministry of Magic to register in advance. Fortunately, this process was very smooth, because of the identity of Ryan Alchemist. The Ministry of Magic staff did not even ask Ryan what the raw materials for wonder-making were. In addition, they also applied for their own pass. Let's go to Hogwarts Castle now to find Hagrid. He should have something we can use. After getting the pass and a batch of raw materials, Ryan walked out of the Ministry of Magic door to walk towards Hogwarts Castle. When they came outside Hagrid's hut, they found that Year was chasing the goblin in the vegetable garden outside the hut. It's a pity that those goblins responded very flexibly. When they rushed towards them, they would hide in the hole and laugh at it all the time. It seems there are guests in the room. Ryan thought about knocking on the door of the small house, and soon he heard the sound of the chair moving, and then there was a voice from Hagrid. Okay, let me open the door. Why are there so many guests today? Hagrid slit the door, revealing his big beard. After seeing it was Ryan, he opened the door wide and let them in. I think the two of you can squeeze and sit on my sofa. I have a lot of guests here today. After entering the room, Lane discovered that Hagrid's room had not changed much. There are still a lot of food hanging on the ceiling, such as dry cheese, ham, and some sausages. The flame is burning in the hearth of a stove in the middle of the room, and there is a big copper that is sobbing out. Good morning, Harry, Ron, and Ginny. Lane greeted the three people sitting on the big sofa. I am glad to see you again. We have been too busy outside for most of the month, and there is really no way to write to you. We can understand this. Harry nodded, then said excitedly, we have learned from the news recently what you are doing. But unfortunately I did not pass the last exam successfully, otherwise I will definitely fight on the same line as you now. Right, speaking of the exam, Hermione reacted suddenly. Harry, Ron, you have to take the NEWT's test this year. You already knew how difficult this test was when the semester began. How come you have time to run out of school today? Hermione, you can still hear you nagging after you graduated. Ron said helplessly. All day I was mad at school. Both Hogmode Day and Quidditch games were cancelled this year, saying it was for safety reasons. The only thing that we can entertain for us is in this place has turned round. Don't you see that there are more people on the field now than in the past? Ryan heard the words and looked at the venue through the window. Sure enough, there were more people on the venue than in the past. And many people use the venue to play games that do not require much space, such as cricket, tennis, and football. These kids are really lively, Hagrid said when pouring the boiling water into a large teapot. But I had to apply a protective magic on my window, because before that my window the glass was smashed twice by football. It's quite common outside. Hermione took a sip after picking up the teacup, then raised the teacup in front of her and looked at it suspiciously. Hagrid, how are you contacting Mrs. Maxime now? Every week there is a letter. Hagrid, who was handing a plate of sugar cubes to Ginny, subconsciously replied, and then a jerk he stood up and almost hit the ham hanging on the roof. How do you know that I never told anyone about this? Harry immediately looked at Hermione with gossip. Hermione cleared her throat slightly and put the teacup in her hand on the saucer. Then she pointed to the teacup and said, this tea set looks very delicate and somewhat biased. Feminine. At the same time, after careful observation, I can be sure that this tea set is produced by France's Bita Ceramics, which belongs to the top porcelain brand in the Mole world. So I guess this should not be bought by Hagrid itself, but certain it was given to him by a woman in France. And the only French woman Hagrid knows is Mrs. Maxim, so the next thing can be easily inferred. After speaking, Hermione showed a little proud expression. You guessed it, Hagrid admits calmly after a little hesitation. Olim and I have been chatting before, especially in this case. She is under a lot of pressure and needs to confide her inner pressure to a reliable person. Yeah, as President Dumbledore said, the more time we should be together, the only way to truly overcome the darkness. Hermione patted Hagrid sitting on a small stool beside him, speaking of the arm. So, I sincerely wish you all. Yeah, I wish you all the best. It's just awesome. Harry and they also send their blessings. After hearing these blessings, Hagrid's excited hands covered his face and sobbed loudly. Hagrid had a sense of inferiority before, because the difference between him and Maximus Pitch is still too big, which is why he kept concealing his feelings, and now everyone's blessings let him suddenly put down the big stone. That's why he suddenly burst into tears. It took a while for Hagrid to relax his emotions, and then he looked at Ryan and they asked, by the way, you have already graduated. I heard Professor Dumbledore say that you have a lot of things to do recently. www.mplenovel.com. So are you doing anything with me today? Yes, there are some. Ryan briefly described the process of saving the two wand makers before, and then continued. For safety reasons, these two magic wand makers hope to stay in our manor during the war. However, During this time, they are willing to help you make magic wands, so I am here to hope that I can buy some materials for making magic wands. Magic wand making material, yes. Hagrid pondered for a while and then tapped his head hard. The voice even made Ryan worry that Hagrid was concussed. Fortunately, this worry did not become reality. Soon Hagrid stood up and took out a dozen silver-white unicorn tail hairs, 2 phoenix feathers, dozens of lychee tail feathers and tie bunches of twigs. I think this should be the most common wand material. Hagrid pointed at these things and said, I picked it up in the Forbidden Forest before. I hope the 2 wand masters can make good use of these things. Because many of the new students in these 2 years cannot buy a wand that belongs to them. They can only use it. Some old wands or second-hand wands that don't fit well. So I hope the new ones can be made quickly. Thank you for your help. By the way, how much will these things cost? Ryan asked after receiving them. You can give me 100 gallons. The money is what I need to hand over to the school. After all, the Forbidden Forest is also a part of Hogwarts in a broad sense. Hagrid said, if that's not the case, I'll pay. I don't even ask you to ask, because I know you want these things for everyone. Chapter 684, Unexpected Guest. After completing the goal to come here, Ryan and Harry talked about what happened recently. At Hogwarts, everything is not much different from usual. Teachers and students are completing teaching tasks according to past plans. It seems that under the shelter of Professor Dumbledore, the chaos outside has not spread further into the school. But this does not mean that the storm outside has not affected the inside of the castle. Now that everyone is together, they are no longer talking about the gossip news of Quidditch or the Witcher Weekly, but some topics about the specific situation outside. Students like Ron, whose family members are fighting on the front lines, often become the birthplace of reliable and unreliable news in the castle. Now people are constantly asking me about the situation outside. Ron said that he looked more stable than before, and if it was a few years ago, he might be excited to be everyone's focus. But now the most expression on his face is a worry. It can be seen from the letter that both Bill, Percy, and my 2 twin brothers have encountered a lot of things recently, and some of them are more dangerous. Seriously, I am worried about them. After Ron had finished speaking, Ginny nodded sympathetically to say, Dad, Fred and George are safer now. After all, they are mainly dealing with some logistical work, but Bill and Percy are too worrying. I know Percy is now a part-time striker, and that job is indeed a bit dangerous. But isn't Bill working in Gu Ling? Now our people can't go to London. What is Bill doing? Lane looked at Harry and they asked. Now he is a member of the mobile team directly under the Auror office and is under the direct command of Moody. Harry said, because the pureblood Death Eaters are located in places where there are too many magic spells, runes, and magic trap. And as an excellent spell solver, Bill has an advantage in facing these things and can help a lot. By the way, Bill said to me last time to thank you. Thank you? Thank you for what? Ron made a baboon, scratching his head. How can I forget that Bill specifically told me in the letter yesterday. Thank you Ryan for the batch of magical dispelling tools for the Ministry of Magic last time. Ginny looked at Ron with a helpless look. Ron, you may really need to enhance your memory. Oh, it was that thing. Ginny remembered what it was as soon as he said Ryan. He had been asking the Weasley twins to collect feedback and needs from everyone. It happened that the last group of Death Eaters tried to attack Hog. A batch of feedback collected by Maud before. In these feedbacks, Aurors complained that it was difficult to break the magical defense of the manor of the pureblood family as the Death Eater. Escape or have reinforcements. So ask if there is anything that can quickly break the magic defense. Ryan then used the crystal ball that was used to destroy the H-circle set by Professor Dumbledore around the goblet in the 4th grade as a model, and soon developed a universal magic prop that can target the magic defense of most buildings now. However, after delivering the batch of 10 crystal to the Ministry of Magic, he did not receive any feedback, so he left the matter behind. It's just that he didn't expect Bill to write a letter of thanks specifically for this thing, so Ryan asked curiously. I haven't heard of the use of those magical Taoisms before. Can you tell me why Bill made a special thank you? Because of an action the other day, Ginny said after recalling the contents of the letter. That time they rushed into a manor of a pureblood family to rescue a dozen hostages. Bill said it would be your curse. The magic props broke through a large amount of defense in a short time, and if the Aurors hit the Death Eaters by surprise, these hostages are likely to be removed or killed. It turns out that way. Ryan felt a lot better when he thought about what George said before. It is always a joy to let innocent people be saved through their creations. In the next hour or so, Ryan talked about their recent lives. It wasn't until the bell rang that they heard Harry that they stood up and carried their school bags to say goodbye to Hagrid, because they were going to the next Black Magic Defense class. Ryan also got up to say goodbye to Harry and they left Hagrid's hut together. After going out, Harry got together while Ginny and Hermione were whispering something behind, and then used a grateful tone say, Ryan, thank you so much for everything you did for me. What? Oh, Ryan was at a loss for a while, before realizing that Harry should have said that he had removed Voldemort's soul from Harry's body last time through a magic ritual. Did Professor Dumbledore tell you what happened? Yes, he told me the things that had concealed me before. Although I was still a little angry at the beginning, I was fully able to understand your previous approach. After all, that soul was connected to Voldemort. If I knew what you concealed, it is very likely that the soul will do something we do not want to happen," Harry said with a sincere expression. "You're fine." Ryan patted Harry on the shoulder. "Also, don't take this matter too seriously. I did it before to overcome the mysterious people, and it's just as easy to save you." "No, I know how difficult it is to get rid of that soul while guaranteeing my life." Harry looked stubborn, and it seemed that Professor Dumbledore did not hide anything in this regard. "So anyway, I will remember the thing that saved my life." "Relax, Harry." Ryan, who looked at Harry with a firmer look, knew that someone like him must have owed himself a life, hoping to repay himself, so he said quickly, "Anyway, now we are still at war, medium. So let us live this war first and say nothing when the war is over." "You are right." Harry nodded. "I wish all of us and everyone we knew to live smoothly to the end of the war. I really hope this war can be over quickly." Everyone whom Lane knows hopes that this war can be ended as soon as possible, because this war has brought too much disaster. Just after Ryan and they were feeling a bit heavy and said goodbye to Harry at the entrance of the hall, two tall and furry figures came out of the castle. The students in the hallway were separated as if they had encountered the water at the bow of the ship. www.mplnovel.com gave way. "Heavenly Pandaren, what are they doing here?" Ryan and Hermione recognized the two upright big guys, only wondering why they appeared in Hogwarts Castle at this time. "Ha, Mr. Liang, and Miss Granger, I'm so happy to see you today." The lead pandaman wearing a tuxedo, a top silk hat, and a panda holding a golden cane in his hand after seeing Ryan. They both seemed a little excited in Mandarin, and they waved his empty left hand to Ryan and waved to them. "Are you?" Ryan looked at the pandaran standing in front of him with some confusion. To him, all pandaran have the same appearance, so they really can't recognize who the pandaran is. "Ah, you human beings can't always distinguish our faces like this." There was a cute smile on the face of the pandaran in front of him. "I am Xung Jusu, and this one is my brother Xung Wen Kai." I remembered it. After the pandaran's self-reported door, Lane suddenly thought of who the pandaran was in front of you. "You are the lobby manager at the Dankou Alchemist Bank in Songjiangjai. We gave it to us last time when we exchanged currency, the one selling the fund." "Yes, it's me." Xung Jusu showed a gentle smile, and then looked at more and more students with curious eyes around him. "Let's go to the town of Hogsmeade. There are just some things I want to talk to you about." "It is not convenient to talk here." "Okay, then let's go to my shop." Ryan made a pleased gesture to signal the two pandaran to keep up with themselves. "I have a shop in Hogsmeade. That is a good place to communicate." Chapter 685, Bank. "Remember in a second." Weasley jokes in the lounge above the shop. Lane, Hermione, and two panda men sit on two large sofas. The coffee table in front of the sofa was filled with freshly brewed green tea and several plates of Dankou-style refreshments, which he had previously obtained from Jushu. This traditional taste is rare even in the wizarding world of the Tan dynasty. Especially this lotus cake is fragrant and not greasy. It is not simple. After all, it needs to be fried in the production process. "I ate in a tea house in Shudi, my hometown," said the panda man named Xung Jusu. "And these are the same for Biluoch Han." Xung Wen Kai, another panda man, grabbed the small teacup with his claws and tasted the tea, then praised. "Like this top-level Sazutayu Dongting Mountain Xishan Biluoch Han, I haven't had a few drinks." After tasting some tea leaves and refreshments, the two pandaran finally started to talk about the reason for finding them today. "It's great to see you in the distant United Kingdom. We have heard about what you have done recently, especially you, Mr. Liang. Your growth in strength surprised us. This is why we came to you. Originally we planned to send you an owl letter from Hogwarts." "What's the specific situation?" Hermione asked curiously. "Actually, we were very curious about why you appeared here after seeing you. After all, it is far away from your hometown, and there have never been people from your brave family before. Then I think you will see us many times in the future because I was promoted. Now I am the president of the Hogsmeade branch of Tanzhou Alchemist Bank." Xung Jusu raised his head slightly and said proudly, "Now, so, congratulations." Ryan and Hermione congratulated with fists in both hands, after which Ryan asked, "Oh, where is your bank now? Why haven't I seen it in Hogmordry before?" "It's being renovated there, and it hasn't opened yet," Xung Jusu said with the pandaran's unique dull tone. "That's the location of the Fenya Sorcerer clothing store before, but we have something to do before opening." After talking, Xung Jusu looked at Ryan with a bright smile. After seeing this smiley face, Ryan immediately raised his vigilance. He also remembered that the last time he went to the Heavenly Dynasty, the alchemists there warned him that although he was a kind creature, he had a strong attachment to money, so it must be watch out for their sales. Although as a kind of intelligent creature, the products that Pandaran sells are genuine. However, they will try their best to empty your pockets, so that you buy a lot of things that are not very necessary to take home. Sure enough, Xung Jusu threw out a very attractive investment project. "You know, we opened a bank from Dankou here to make money. To make money, we need to have a good relationship with local people. Therefore, we only hold Tanhou Alchemist Bank Hogsmeade branch 50% of the shares. The rest will be assigned to you." Just in the negotiations at Hogwarts Castle, We reached an agreement with Principal Dumbledore and Minister Burns. Hogsmeade Ministry of Magic occupies 22% of the price with land, labor and a series of preferential policies, shares, and Hogwarts also used gold and a series of other guarantees to occupy 22% of the shares. The remaining shares are open for public recruitment. Kai pulled out several contracts to show to Ryan. Then why did you find me? Ryan asked. I know that there are no banks at all, and the big Gs need banks. In this case, there should be countless people opening a bank here. People are willing to invest. Why should they come to me specifically? You're right, there are countless people willing to invest, but only willingly. Xanduosu shrugged his shoulders and spread his paws. But the problem is that the people who choose to support Hogsmeade right now basically don't have much money to invest, and because of our internal ban, I can't go to London to raise funds. Xanduosu is talking about a very realistic situation. Don't look at the fact that the British magic world is divided into two groups to tie the game. It seems that both sides are evenly matched. But it is undeniable that the wealth in the British magic world is mainly concentrated in the hands of pureblood families who support the Ministry of Magic in London, especially after the London Ministry of Magic blocked the Gu Ling court. Hogsmeade really didn't have much money. If it went before Ryan became the Hogwarts school director, he took out a large amount of gold, and then the principal exchanged these golds for gold through his channel. If the order promotes production to promote the economic cycle, it is likely that the economy here it has collapsed. From this point of view, there are not many people who can produce a lot of hard currency in this place, so Xanduosu came to Ryan to estimate that Professor Dumbledore was also instructed. After all, Dumbledore knew that Ryan had a lot of hard currency, and at the same time as an alchemist with a magic stone, it was impossible to really lack money. In addition, there are two reasons why Xanduosu came to Ryan for financing. One of them is that as a new bank, it will inevitably be rejected by the old bank. As the only bank in the Western world, Gu Ling Pavilion, even after several goblins' rebellion, the Gu Ling Pavilion of various countries was forced to be split and maintained an independent status by the wizards, but the Gu Ling Pavilion of each country is not easy to deal with. Fortunately, there is a basic principle in the magic world that power is respected, so Tanka Alchemist Bank wants to successfully operate in the UK, it must necessarily be backed by enough power. Ryan, the wizard who can confront Voldemort, is naturally their first choice. Just like the other partners they chose were Hogwarts School and Hogmore's Ministry of Magic. In Xanduosu's opinion, a Voldemort can make the whole Europe shudder. Then if, 1 second to remember, if there are two Voldemort wizards of this level behind his bank, then there is no need to worry about any outrageous tricks of the group of gallant fairies who have lost their interests. The other reason is the reason of Ryan himself. Of course, the Tanzhao Alchemist Bank hopes that the collaborators will have goodwill towards the Tanzhao wizards. Ryan can be considered a friendly person regardless of his lineage or previous actions. So how many shares can you sell me? Ryan asked the Pandaren in front of him, and it was clear that this group of Pandaren had already sold those bank shares in other places before. If you have money, we can sell you up to 5% of the shares. Kai said a surprising number. 5%. Hermione's eyes widened in surprise. www.mtlnovel.com. Because her parents are dentists, Hermione has a certain understanding of the economic stuff. She knows that as an individual shareholder can account for such a bank, the 5% ratio is already very high. Yes, 5%, Kai said helplessly. Because in the previous fundraising, all the wizards did not have much hard currency. We met the dozen people before raising 1% of the shares. Let's invest the rest of the money. Ryan negotiated with Hermione through the Phoenix brand and immediately made a decision. Then he got up and went out to go downstairs and entered the Wanji grocery store. After a few minutes, he came out with a space bag. Do you see if the money is enough? After returning to the lounge, he asked Xanduosu the space bag. If not enough, I can add more. It's not only enough, it's even more. Xanduosu extended his paws and opened the mouth of the bag. He looked carefully and said that Ryan put 5 cubic meters of gold in it. Hundreds of colorful gems the size of soybeans are placed in the plastic box. It's okay, if you have more money, you can count our deposits. Ryan said, I don't lack money anyway. Chapter 686, Getting Better. Remember in a second. When I last invested in Hogwarts, Ryan knew that even in the magic world, gold, silver, precious metals, and various gemstones are hard currency with good circulation. This is because whether it is gold, silver or gems have a great role in the production of magic props and potions, and even in many cases are indispensable. Therefore, the wealth symbols of these mul worlds can have the same effect in the magic world. After discussing the specific situation and signing a series of documents, Ryan has officially become the largest individual independent shareholder of the Hokheimen branch of the Tanzhao Alchemist Bank, which has not yet been established. Well, I wish us a happy cooperation. After all the documents were signed, Xanduosu extended his big paws and held Ryan together. Then we will leave now. After all, the bank will open this week, and there are still many things to be dealt with by us. Then wish you all the best. Ryan waved away the two Pandaren. Sure enough, as the Heavenly Alchemist said, This group of brave peasants had always been making money as their fundamental goal under non-war conditions, and they were not even willing a minute wasted on all kinds of idle business. Therefore, the two panda men just said so quickly after they got the investment. I finally found out that they have something in common with the goblins, Hermione whispered to Ryan, looking at the burly backs of the two pandarin who seemed to squeeze on the narrow stairs. For them, time is money. So they made so much money, Lane said with a smile. Whether it's a goblin or a pandarin, these creatures that make money their most important goal in their lives. Only in this way can they make as much money as possible. After Hogsmeade had handled everything, Lane and Hermione returned to their estate with the purchases. After getting the first batch of materials, the two magic wand masters started construction smoothly. Because there is nothing to do in the manor now, the efficiency of the two magic wand masters is much higher than before. At their speed, they should be able to make up for the wands they are missing before Christmas. After dealing with the two wand masters, Ryan began his next plan. He did not plan to spend much energy on Voldemort, because Professor Dumbledore would stare at him. For him, the most important thing now is to reduce those innocent people who were inexplicably killed by the group of Death Eaters during the war. Unfortunately, it is only Ryan and Hermione who are striving for this goal. For the Order of the Phoenix or the Hogsmeade Ministry of Magic, they have to devote most of their energy to the protection of wizards. They simply cannot draw enough power to protect moles. Lupin wrote a letter saying that there are werewolves willing to help, but considering whether the work of Hogsmeade guards or the cultivation of magic plants in Norwegian plantations is very important. In addition, the werewolves that can be drawn out are only left with some old and weak and sick, and there are many risks when facing the Death Eaters. So Ryan specifically went to letter to refuse the werewolf's kindness. For Voldemort, such random attacks by the scumbags can create an atmosphere of terror and disrupt social order. On the other hand, it can attract the attention of Hogsmeade Ministry of Magic and the Order of the Phoenix, and then cover up the conspiracy of him and those core Death Eaters. So he encouraged those new Death Eaters from abroad to free their inner evil. But for Ryan and them, it was not difficult to defeat the enemy when they met ordinary Death Eaters, especially this crowd of people. But the difficulty is that it is difficult to stop the Death Eaters, especially the scumbags that Voldemort recruited with money, to take random street attacks. But after careful consideration, Ryan found that the knowledge he had previously acquired from the world of A Song of Ice and Fire could solve that problem. This knowledge was given to Ryan after the Kanxing Stone and Cuxing Stone got the old gods and gods, that is to make Uliankma for monitoring. Of course, because there is no fish beam in Harry Potter's world, Ryan spent some time using multiple world technologies to improve this magic. After the improvement, as long as any plant that has been grown for more than 30 years is engraved with a face pattern not less than the size of the thumb, the plant can function as a fish beam. Of course, the older the plant, the more extraordinary power it can have. Thanks to the British people who have awakened their awareness of environmental protection in the past 100 years, which made Ryan's job of finding plants for more than 30 years a lot easier. And the face pattern of the size of the thumb is also very concealed and will not cause others to doubt. So in just a month, Ryan, with the help of Rose Crystal and his dolls and sisters, established a surveillance network that basically enveloped the British Isles and the Nordic cultivation base. In addition, Ryan also used the ability of the shapeshifters to control a group of crows and let them patrol in several big cities in order to achieve the role of leak detection and filling vacancies. Because crows are common birds in British cities, these crows did not cause anyone to doubt. When all of these are arranged, winter is here. At 12 noon that day, Ryan was perceiving this newly built intelligence network. There was a knock on the door outside the door. After Ryan came to the door and opened the door, it was found that Hermione, who had sent the freshly prepared wand and magic props to Hogsmeade, appeared at the door. At this time she put on the red woolen cape with white borders, and at the same time put on the hood. Lane discovered that there were melting snowflakes on the top of her head and shoulders. "Is it snowing at Hogsmeade?" Lane leaned sideways to let Hermione come in and said to her at the same time, "It seems that the weather forecast is accurate. It is reasonable for me to ask you to add a dress before you leave." "You're right." Hermione held out her wand and turned a little feather duster beside it into a little bird to dust off. Carrot 01 second to remember. She said the snow on her body at the same time. "I should have thought that it will snow in Scotland every November. Unfortunately, the temperature is still not so cold here in the south where we live this year. As a result, I forgot about this matter." "So what's going on at Hogsmeade now?" Ryan asked. "Recently he has been busy making artificial fish beams in addition to magic props, so he hasn't paid attention to the recent situation for some time. It should be said that the situation is slowly getting better." Hermione handed over her coat to a Mr. Clever who came, and walked to the living room wearing a white sweater and fluffy slippers at home. "At least in my opinion, the previous chaos has disappeared and everything is back in order. For example, people in Hogsmeade have started a normal life again, no longer in the state of extreme panic before." "It sounds great." www.mtlnovel.com. This war seems to be over for a short time. If everyone does not have an ordinary heart, I worry that people will collapse before the war ends. After sitting on the sofa, Lane handed Hermione a cup of hot cocoa and said, "You're right." Hermione nodded and said, "By the way, I went to Hogsmeade this time and found that the Tanzhou Alchemist Bank has already opened. This is one of the important reasons why Hogsmeade has recently become prosperous. Really? What about the bank? Ryan asked after sitting upright. I mean, are they popular? Has anyone rejected them? None of your worries have happened. Hermione raised her eyebrows. At least now everyone has a good reputation for them. On the one hand, unlike the goblins, they hired a large number of local staff to provide jobs for everyone. On the other hand, I suspect that they may have some natural skills like Meiwa, enchanted magic. Everyone's perception of them is much better than fairies. It might be that the panda in are more cute. Ryan defended his fellows. Otherwise, there will not be so many people in the London Zoo to see pandas. Chapter 687, Continuous Fight. Remember in a second. After setting up a complete monitoring system, Ryan began to attack frequently, and sometimes even lived in the wild for the convenience of action. Thanks to the last time I learned the magic of Liu Meng's cabin in Silver Moon City Lane, and then combined with all the protection, safeguarding and a series of spells, field operations are basically impossible to be found by those search teams. Search teams are now everywhere in the south of England, and some obvious lineage discriminators have voluntarily joined the team. Their mission is to find hemp seed wizards or other intelligent creatures in the factory in various places. After all, not every hemp seed wizard or magical intelligent creature is willing to throw away everything and escape to the north. During this time, they have been to the brightly lit cities, but also to dense jungles, dark cliff seams, purple marshes, and hillsides full of gorse flowers. In addition to rushing to the scene of the attack as quickly as possible to kill the attackers. In the wild, they occasionally read the name of Voldemort after setting up various magic circles, and then ambush the Death Eaters who heard the news. Even in some cases, they will randomly attack a Death Eater's manor or property, kill all the resistance spells and Death Eaters with blood on their hands, and hang their bodies on the pole. Then use the memory eraser from the world of Men in Black to wash all the magic-related memories of the remaining people and intelligent creatures like house elves. Finally, Ryan and Hermione will use Wildfire and the 5 very young dragons that were fostered in the world of the Song of Ice and Fire to burn all the industries of the Death Eaters, and at the same time change the local area. By communicating with a natural environment, the magic distribution prevents those plantations from recovering in a short time. During the last war, the most terrifying battle against Voldemort was not head-on fighting. Both the Longbottoms and the Potters have confronted Voldemort 3 times and survived, and such people are not a minority. In that war, what really caused the Phoenix Society and the Ministry of Magic to suffer a great deal was that after the whereabouts were mastered, the mysterious people and Death Eaters were able to launch attacks and carry out killings at times and places that no one could imagine. Eliminate one rebel after another. Professor Dumbledore and the Ministry of Magic at that time did not have much resistance to Voldemort's tactics. In addition to concentrating on protecting some points, they could only go back and forth to try to recover their losses. Unfortunately, this did not work very well. Judging from the group photo of the Phoenix members taken out by Hagrid at the time, at least most of the Phoenix members were killed in the last war. If it wasn't the Voldemort's last slice of his soul that affected his spirit too much, he firmly believed that Harry Potter, who was a baby at the time, was the assassination of the biggest enemy in the magic world, and Mr. Potter who just happened to have mastered some ancient magic. If you bounce the death curse, Voldemort might have won in the last war. Now, Ryan and they started the targeted removal of the Death Eaters just like Voldemort had cleared those resistances. In the face of such an attack, the pureblood families who target more in this regard are sorrowful, because they simply have no way to hide their manor or plantation. And for Voldemort, he would not release the complex and mana-hungry loyal mantra for several servants. After trying various methods but no effect, the group of Death Eaters finally reduced those shameless attacks, and the group of Black Wizards abroad was also scared to stop the harm to the innocent after a large number of people were killed by Ryan. In short, after more than 40 lives and more than 10 manor estates paid by Death Eaters in more than a month, they could not be stopped at all, and even after any early warning of their attacks, the killing of innocent Muzz was finally stopped. Are we doing this? Is it worth it? After washing one morning in the morning, Ryan asked Hermione while they were walking by a campsite by the river. To know what we are doing is shaking the cornerstone of the British magic world. I'm worried it will cause serious problems after the war. Of course it is, Ryan said. As you said, it does cause serious problems after the end of the war. But the prerequisite for us to consider this problem is that we have won the war. Before we win, there is no need to consider these things. And the facts are already here. Under our reciprocal retaliation, from yesterday, the wanton killing of innocent people has temporarily stopped. We can say that everything we do is meaningful. After all, whatever under what circumstances, talent is the most important. You are right. Many times you have to choose things. I know this too. Hermione nodded. It's just that sometimes after successfully completing the goal, there will always be some greedy hope to get all the benefits. After a few minutes of walking by the river, Ryan and they returned to the camp hidden by magic. Just after passing through a transparent barrier, I saw 6 or 7 tents in the barrier distributed around the extinguished portable stove, and some people were going in and out at the door of the tent. "Good morning, Commander." "Good morning." After seeing Ryan and their return, the wizards stood up to greet them, and Ryan and Hermione saluted them one by one. These people were the wizards who were rescued from the Death Eater's manor and various attacks. They are mainly hemp-seed wizards, but there are also mixed blood or even pure blood wizards. Originally Ryan planned to transfer them to a safe Hogsmeade after rescue, but some wizards hoped to revenge with Ryan due to the death of their relatives and friends, and also hoped that through their own efforts to avoid letting others suffer their fate. After some discussion, Ryan first sent those families and those who were not suitable for fighting back to Hogsmeade, and then took those volunteers to form a guerrilla squad. Carrot 01 second to remember. Side training. But fortunately with their help, so that Ryan they can better destroy those manor in the previous battles. Soon, the portable stove was reignited. The two guerrillas began to heat up a variety of foods, while Ryan sat while thinking about the goal of the next move. The next task is to maintain high pressure on the dead, keep them in a state of fear, and ensure that they dare not have the ability to kill the innocent. When the meal was almost ready, the three people who had patrolled outside came back to change jobs. The only difference is that this time the three of them led others into the camp. "Dirk, why did you come with two goblins? Was it because of the occupational disease?" After seeing the two goblins brought in, some guerrillas ridiculed the patrol leader who walked in front. "No, I just caught the two of them outside. When I patrolled just now, I heard something happening by the river. I found that the two of them were trying to catch fish there. I think I can get some news from them, so I caught them both," Patrol Captain Dirk said. The patrol captain was the director at the Fairy Liaison Office who was rescued from the trial court when they were in the Ministry of Magic. "I went home to pick up the child and prepared to run north, but unfortunately because of his higher position in the Ministry of Magic, he was caught up by the Death Eaters before he ran far. After being overtaken, Dirk Cressway resisted very bravely. His resistance was quite effective, and he succeeded in attracting Death Eaters' attention to buy time for his wife and children to allow them to escape to Hogsmeade. But unfortunately he was caught by Death Eaters later. It wasn't until Ryan 3 weeks ago that they captured a pureblood manor that they rescued him and another wizard from a demented cellar. After being rescued again, Dirk Cressway realized that only by destroying Voldemort and the Death Eaters would he and his family be able to regain a peaceful life. So after going to Hogsmeade to meet his wife who works in the Weasley joke shop, he joined the Ryan Guerrillas. As a student who could join the Slug Club as a student, Dirk quickly showed his value in the Guerrillas. For example, he shouldered a very important patrol task, and today it was because of his vigilance that he discovered the two fairies who ran to the guerrilla camp. Chapter 688, Encounter. Remember in a second. Introduce yourself, and why did you appear here? After rushing to eat breakfast, Ryan began to inquire about the two court goblins. "If I remember correctly, you usually count gold in Gu Ling Pavilion or collect various ores in your underground mines to make magic props. So I am curious why I met you here at this place. My name is Gonuk, and the one next to me is Pull Ring. Seriously, we don't want to do this either. For us, whether it's listening to the tumbling collision of gold coins in the vault or standing by the hot fire, it's better than wandering in the wild like this," said the goblin with a loud voice. "But now, we are in danger of life, so we have to wander around like this." "Life is dangerous, what a joke," said an gorilla spectator next to him. "If I remember correctly, the goblin generally supports the mysterious man. Just like now, your Gu Ling Pavilion has basically stopped for our services. From the fact that Gu Ling Pavilion has now become a financial institution exclusively for the mysterious person." "Your impression is wrong," said the goblin in a low voice. "We are not on which side. This is the war of the wizards." "But why do you actually stand on the side of the mysterious man?" Dirk asked. "According to my previous experience, you used to be not as biased as you said. But now from a factual point of view, your Gu Ling Pavilion has indeed become an accomplice of the mysterious man and the Ministry of Magic in London." "It's just a part of the goblin," said the goblin called Gonuk, who also looked very angry. "I rejected some kind of request that I thought was rude, and naturally my personal safety is in danger. But even if it is so, I will stick to my point of view." "Unreasonable demand?" Ryan asked somewhat curiously. "What kind of request will make you refuse so firmly?" "Things that are not commensurate with my ethnic dignity," the goblin replied, his voice rougher and less human-like. "I'm not a house elf, and I will not bow down to the wizard and obey." "Then pull the ring. How about you?" Ryan turned to look at another goblin after listening to Gonuk. Although he hadn't seen the goblin, he knew that the goblin should have taken Harry to get it. The magic stone, who wanted to be able to go to the vault with the highest level of confidentiality at that time, should also be a senior staff member with not a low level in the Gu Ling Pavilion, and may even be the core staff of the Gu Ling Pavilion. "Similar reasons," said Lowen. "Gu Ling Pavilion is no longer controlled solely by my race. I don't admit that the wizard is my master. In this way, it will naturally be hunted down. There are some members of my family besides the disciples. Yes, without those guys who disagree with us, we can even live peacefully in the goblin crypt instead of wandering around like this now." Gonuk looked angry. "Know that even if the goblins were the worst, no one could break into the goblin crypt. That is to say, the London Ministry of Magic, Death Eaters or mysteries now have control of the Gu Ling Pavilion in Britain. Hermione quickly sorted out an important message from the words of the two goblins. And most goblins have already chosen to cooperate, and people like you who are not willing to cooperate can only go into exile. Hermione is right, although you may not want to hear others say this. Ryan stretched out his hand and interrupted as the goblin wanted to say something. If it weren't for the goblins who advocated cooperation with the group of Death Eaters, you wouldn't need to go into exile now. People with magic wands, you don't understand some things, Lawrence said angrily. For us, maintaining independence and freedom is the most important thing. There are always sacrifices in the process. Although I hate those the fairies who drove us out, but I also know why they did it. Ryan knew what the group of British goblins thought. Gu Ling did not want Hardtop Voldemort to suffer heavy losses, but they also did not want to give the outside world a feeling that the goblin was weak and bully. In this case, it is a last resort for them to maintain control of the Gu Ling Pavilion at the expense of some goblins. Of course, the goblins dare to do this also firmly believe that the group of Death Eaters is not enough in a short time the power and knowledge to take over the complex business of Gu Ling. For the goblins, no matter who is on stage to run the Gu Ling fairies, they are indispensable. And this time it was the extremists in the Gu Ling Pavilion who were thrown by the fairies as scapegoats. Their previous contempt for the wizards made them successfully on the clearance list of Voldemort and the Death Eaters. After all, according to the usual habits of Death Eaters, this non-human intelligent creature itself is at the bottom of their contempt chain. And this kind of goblin who refuse to kneel and lick their toes must be the object of priority removal. Gu Ling will naturally not cause everyone to be in trouble because of some people, so it will naturally kick this group of extremists. Even in order to show that they have nothing to do with them, some goblins were sent to chase them down. People with wands. What does that mean? A gorilla asked as Ryan thought. At the same time, the gorillas around them all showed a listening expression. After all, most of the wizards here are grown in the mole world or mixed race, and they don't really understand some common sense in the wizarding world. Not to mention that most people who grew up in the wizarding world at this knowledge point don't even know it. Right, with a magic wand, the goblin does not seem to be shy about sharing the meaning of the word with others. He said softly, the wizard and the goblin have been fighting for a long time. Accurately speaking, the wizards and goblins in the European cultural circle have been fighting for a long time. Hermione added, *01 second to remember. It is sufficient to say, as far as I know, African wizards do not use magic wands, and the intelligent creatures on the other side of the heaven often have their own spellcasting props. In addition to that, the goblin can cast spells without a wand. Someone next to him said, without a wand at this point will not hinder your life. Don't mention this matter. Gryffindor looked angry. Only wizards in Europe and America will refuse to let other magical creatures share the secrets of wand learning, and will not allow us to expand our influence. When it comes to secrets, isn't the blockade of knowledge mutual? Ryan asked. In the heavens, the intelligent creatures and the human wizards gained the knowledge of human spells and the secrets of how to make the props through knowledge exchange, and you fairies. Well, I don't want to pay anything and just want to get it for free. Yeah, the goblin wouldn't disclose his magic, said Dirk Cressway, former director of the Goblin Liaison Office. They also never told us how to make swords and armor, the special method of fairy forging metal, even the casting method of Jialong. Be aware that those panda people in the heavens were very generous to share with us immediately after the establishment of the bank. The manufacturing method of sing-along. Shut up. The anger in Tobin's eyes now seems to be burning the entire tent. What's the difference between you and the Dark Lord? They are both trying to be more solid than us. Yu reads www.yuukanzu.com and seizes our stuff at the same time. Oh, your stuff. Dirk looked angry too. The proper owner of anything is its maker, not the purchaser. Anything made by the goblin, in the eyes of the goblin, deserves to belong to them. Even if the wizard has paid, the goblins will think it is the payer rented it. It is believed that after the death of the original purchaser, the thing should be returned to the goblin. And the wizard passed it to the wizard and no longer paid, which is no better than stealing. A whispering noise immediately sounded in the tent. Although most of the wizards here did not use leprechauns as luxury goods in the wizarding world, they generally felt that the goblins' definition of their own things was unacceptable to them. Just as the two fairies were about to explode, Rose Crystal flew in from outside, and she held several newspapers in her hand. Soon she bypassed the others and came to Lane's ear and whispered a few words. Ryan opened his eyes instantly, then took a closer look at the newspaper. After reading the newspaper, he looked up at the two flushed goblins in front of him and said, just now you were talking about the independence and freedom of reading goblins. But now it seems that this is not the case. Chapter 689, The Secret of Gu Ling Pavilion. After reading the newspaper that Rose Crystal sent in, Ryan taunted the two fairies across from him. But before the two fair-looking fairies had been asked, Dirk asked curiously, Commander, in the end what's going on? Look at these newspapers. I really don't know that the independence and freedom of the goblins are so hypocritical, Ryan said as he handed the newspaper in his hand, and then chatted with Rose Crystal. In front of these gorillas, Ryan did not hide the existence of Rose Crystal. On the one hand, the Rose Crystal played a big role in the previous action, it is difficult to completely hide her whereabouts. On the other hand, he has always regarded Rose Crystal as his loved one, which is also a good opportunity for her to act in public. As a result, Ryan discovered that the appearance of Rose Crystal really surprised the gorillas, but that was only the case. Later, he realized that for the gorillas, as a master alchemist, Ryan made their conscious dolls belong to their expectations. As a group of wizards who have no basic knowledge of alchemy, they feel that Rose Crystal is not different from the branch hat, but the appearance is different. This made Ryan's previous set of rhetoric about the origin of Rose Crystal not useful at all, but on the other hand, Rose Crystal also blended into this world more easily than expected. Dirk quickly read the newspapers, and his face also showed a surprised expression. But he said nothing but passed the newspaper to the next person. After a few minutes, everyone in the tent saw the contents of the newspaper. How is this possible? Finally they handed the newspaper to the two fairies. After reading, the two fairies opened their eyes at the same time, and the newspaper fell from their hands to the ground. How could Gu Ling make such orders? Are they crazy? The front page of the newspaper that fell on the floor, whether it was Hogsmeade's British Magic or London's The Prophet's Daily, had the same title written in bold and black font, announced that it would cooperate with the London Ministry of Magic to seize and confiscate all the fortunes stored in Hagrid in the Gu Ling Pavilion. The wizards present did not respond much, and the wizards who had fallen into this state were not born of ancient magic families. Therefore, they did not have much deposits in Gu Ling Pavilion. For them, even if the deposit was confiscated by Gu Ling Pao, the loss would not be great. At the same time, as they grew up in the Mole world, they did not feel anything wrong with this behavior of confiscating enemy funds during the war. However, this news is an unacceptable thing for the goblins, especially for the Goblin and Gonuk extremists, because this means that the Gu Ling Pavilion, which has always been neutral, is finally controlled by the Death Eaters, and what they least want to see happened. All previous preparations seem to have no effect. The two fairies cried together and cried. On the one hand, as extremists, they could not accept this fact. On the other hand, this means that their previous sacrifice has become meaningless, and they now weep bitterly about their future destiny. How could the fairies suddenly succumb? Hermione, who was sitting next to Ryan, asked Ryan through the Phoenix brand. To know that the British goblins have launched so many rebellions, how could this time simply accept the Death Eater's order? I think there may be two reasons. After looking at the two goblins and crying whispers held together in the tent, after discovering that they had not noticed themselves, Ryan also explained to Hermione through the branding of Phoenix Road. First, in such a long war, the current goblins are no longer the same as the past goblins. The wizards have lost the fighting spirit of the past in a long peace. The goblins are similar. Even if they realize after this point, try to keep the fighting spirit, but the long and peaceful life finally let them lose the spirit of the past that dared to die. Of course, this is also related to the actions of the wizards. Ryan pointed out a key point. After many goblin rebellions, the goblins of the goblins became the only financial institution in the United Kingdom and even Western Europe. By 1865, the Ministry of Magic even agreed to allow the goblins to take full control of the Gory. After the British and European financial banks were in hand, the resistance spirits of the goblins were greatly consumed by these wealth. In addition, through the monopoly of the financial industry, the goblins also obtained the long-awaited rights, which has reduced contradictions with wizards. You are right. Hermione suddenly thought of some knowledge. Gu Ling Pavilion may not be as old as we thought. Only when the economy develops to a certain extent will such things as banks be needed. Therefore, I even suspect that the establishment of Gu Ling Pavilion is related to the wizards in order to appease the goblins. Accurately, a very important reason for the wizards to let goblins take control of the Gu Ling Pavilion is to appease the goblins and kill their fighting spirit at the same time. Ryan replied, that's why this mysterious man can use intimidation this time. One of the reasons for seizing control of Gu Ling Pavilion. Then another reason, Hermione asked curiously. You just said that there are two reasons why the goblins cooperated with the mysterious man's order. You said one, so what is the other reason? That is the Hogsmeade branch of Danko Alchemist Bank opened in Hogsmeade. Of course, in the next step for localization, Sun Guangzhou suggested that this bank be named and may further reduce their shareholding. It sounds like a good idea, but it doesn't have much to do with the issues we are discussing. Hermione said, somewhat puzzled. No, there is a connection. Ryan turned to smile at Hermione, then continued through the Phoenix brand. It turns out that Gu Ling Pavilion has always been in a monopoly in the UK and where it was radiated by British wizarding power. This monopoly has brought not only money but also rights to the goblins. But now, competitors have been introduced into the UK. Because of the threat from the mysterious side, the goblins have no way to come to Hogsmeade to drive the future Union Bank of England out of the UK through competition. So for them, the only way to eliminate the threat from competitors is now. The only way to safeguard their wealth and rights is to completely trust the mysterious people, and then unite the power of the mysterious people to eradicate us. What about the American Gu Ling Pavilion? Hermione asked, a little puzzled. Don't we know that the Gu Ling Pavilion was the most important fund provider behind the group of Death Eaters a while ago? www.mtlnovel.com. Didn't they come out to help pass the Gu Ling Pavilion? How is it possible? Although the Gu Ling Pavilion in the United States still has the Gu Ling Pavilion brand, they are two completely independent banks. Ryan told Hermione the information he had obtained when chatting with the Weasley brothers. As a large family in the magic world, many members of the Weasley family also immigrated to North America. Naturally, they also have a deep understanding of the American magic world. Don't forget, this time, a very important supporter of the Death Eaters is the Gu Ling Pavilion in the United States. Unlike us here, the controller of the Gu Ling Pavilion in the United States is their magical congress, and their actions often represent the United States. There will the wizarding world. For example, this time they provided funds for the pureblood family of the British magic world. In fact, to weaken the British magic world and even the European magic world, in order to obtain the leading position of the Western magic world. Of course, because Professor Dumbledore is still alive, and at the same time, you are kind enough to say that because of my rise, Americans do not want to come down in person. Just like those two world wars, they only hope that we can help each other through money and resources. Carnage, and then come out and dominate everything when we are all weakened. That's why you destroyed those manors before, right? Hermione reacted. You are making bad debts for those American wizards and let them continue to suffer losses. Yes, the completely destroyed manor and plantation herald that the money they loaned will never be recovered. After the loss reaches a certain level, the American wizarding community is likely to choose to stop the loss in time. After all, according to their goals, this kind of under the circumstances, they do not want to intervene too deeply, let alone be involved in this war. Lane nodded and replied. Chapter 690, Another Year of Christmas. The news in the newspaper today represents the end of an old era. At least after Voldemort's former control of the Ministry of Magic in London, Britain exerted a powerful influence on Gu Ling Pavilion through various means, but it did not directly intervene in ancient times like now. The inner operation of the Ling even made things that completely destroyed the cornerstone of the ancient Ling. You know, Gu Ling Pavilion can stand for so many years is not just the authorization of the Ministry of Magic. Let everyone believe that these fairies who were former enemies and store their wealth inside. The most important point is that fairies insist on maintaining the privacy of guests, while ensuring that they will not conspire to not belong to their wealth. Although humans and goblins have different perceptions of wealth ownership, the goblin respects human cognition when there is a serious gap between the two forces. This also allowed Gu Ling to exist for hundreds of years with his credit, and even monopolize the British financial industry. But now it's all over. Just as Ryan traversed the United States and asked Swiss banks to hand over depositors' accounts, which caused serious damage to the Swiss banking industry. The Death Eaters now move the gold away from the vaults that do not belong to them, which has also hit the Gu Ling Pavilion. From now on, the Gu Ling Pavilion has lost its gold signboard and will not occupy an absolute advantage as before. Too. However, this behavior also shows that Ryan's previous tactics were successful. The Death Eaters now hope to raise enough money to make up for the damage caused by the destruction of the manor, and then stabilize the American wizards in order to obtain more resources. Oh, I really don't know if I should be happy or sad now, Hermione whispered, and was heard by Ryan next to him. So Ryan asked curiously, what are you talking about? It's like this. After watching the people in the tent, they walked out of the tent after discussing the previous things, and took away the two goblins who nearly passed out crying. Hermione opened her mouth very simply and said, the loss on our side is indeed great, but the mysterious man is using long-term interests in exchange for short-term benefits. In a certain way, this is conducive to the further advantage of the war. Fortunately, we introduced our own bank in advance, so the overall impact on us should not be great. Ryan analyzed calmly. But the impact on the mysterious man may be greater. Don't forget that today we can confiscate our wealth there, then tomorrow we will definitely confiscate the wealth of other people and even Death Eaters, and to be honest, Death Eaters we have more wealth than us. After walking out of the tent, Lane discovered that everyone was packing up the camp and preparing to evacuate. A guerrilla fighter came over and asked after watching Ryan walk out of the tent, Commander, where are we going next? After hearing this sentence, many wizards who were cleaning up also turned their attention. The morale of the entire team is high because of the consecutive victories in the past, and everyone is eager to fight under the leadership of Ryan. I think, let's take a holiday back to Hogsmeade today, Ryan said to everyone. After all, we have fought so long before, and it's time to take a break. And I just read the newspaper, and the day after tomorrow should be its Christmas. Is Christmas coming? Many wizards showed expressions of sudden enlightenment. After all, they had been imprisoned in the dungeon or fled everywhere, even with the Dementors. In this case, they have been living a very vague life. Until Ryan said today, they only realized that Christmas is coming. It's great, go home for Christmas. The wizards whispered, although they still have a strong fighting spirit and a firm fighting will, they will still feel some fatigue in the previous continuous battles. Therefore, for them, The opportunity to have a good rest and reunite with their family is definitely news to make them happy. So after getting the news of going home for Christmas, everyone's hands and feet are a lot more dexterous than before. Soon the entire camp was cleaned up. After the previous patrol returned, everyone returned to Hogsmeade with 2 goblins. "Ah, welcome to you, our heroes." Percy, who had just arrived at the door of Hogsmeade Town, as the captain of the town guard today, greeted them enthusiastically. "Oh, how did you all come over today?" Ryan before they would send people to send those trophies and rescued hostages after the battle, but never a group of people all returned. So Percy asked strangely after seeing a group of people. "Oh, we came back for Christmas," Ryan explained, and after hearing this, Percy patted his forehead lightly. "Oh my god, you're right. Christmas is coming soon. I've been so busy recently and almost forgot about this. It's just too bad. My mother would kill me if I didn't think of it today. By the way, what about the 2 fairies in your team?" Percy asked after seeing the 2 fairies that were standing behind the crowd and blocked by everyone so they didn't see them. "Is this where you rescued the hostages from the previous raid? It feels like you will always come with all kinds of people every time you come over." "No. They just met on our way," Ryan said, "but they have been chased by mysterious people before, so we brought them in hand." "If that's the case, you'd better take those 2 goblins to the Ministry of Magic. I think the staff of the Ministry of Magic should be able to arrange a suitable place for them," Percy said. Other people also checked this time Ryan their pass. After seeing the companion's gesture, Percy made a pleased gesture. "Wish you a Merry Christmas." "You are the same," Ryan said, and then came to the main road of the town with everyone. There are now more people on the road than before. There was even the kind of prosperity before the war in Hogsmeade. Because it snowed a few days ago, there was a thick layer of snow everywhere in the town. There are a lot of Christmas decorations in the shops on both sides of the road, and on the road, people decorate the doors and windows of the store with a variety of sparkling ornaments and mistletoe. www.mplnovel.com. At the same time, magic dyes have drawn various Christmas banners and the garland tied with branches hangs over the road with magic, and even some garlands are enchanted with special magic, and he keeps singing Christmas songs. In addition, various Christmas products also appeared in the windows of many shops, and the merchants also carried out corresponding activities. For example, Ryan saw the Panda Man in front of the bank wearing a red and white Santa costume to distribute candy to every wizard who passed by the bank. In short, the tense atmosphere of war in the whole town is much less, and everyone is immersed in the joy of the festival. "I will send these 2 goblins to the Ministry of Magic. After all, I am more familiar with the people over there," Dirk Cressway said. This time everyone has come to the center of Hogsmeade. This place a huge Christmas tree is now placed, and several children are playing snowball fights around the tree. "Okay, then everyone will disband now, go home individually, and we will contact you if something happens." Ryan watched everyone leave after he finished speaking to everyone, and every wizard looked very excited. Only those 2, the goblin looked like he was not at home, following Dirk's magical steps toward the hill like a walking corpse. "Then where are we going now?" "Back to school." After watching everyone leave, Hermione turned around and asked. "Ginny wrote a lot of letters a while ago, and I really want to see them now." "For the time being, go to the Weasley joke shop," Lane suggested. "I heard that a while ago, Weasley prepared some special Christmas products. I want to see how those products are selling now." Chapter 691, Christmas Sale. It seems that the prosperity has been restored here. Hermione said that the people coming and going on both sides of the street did look much better than the depression of a while ago. "It's just Christmas." Ryan shook his head slightly. This is some kind of venting after everyone was too tense before, and it can't fully explain the problem. If the situation is to be completely improved, I think unless this war can really end. Just as they were talking, they had come to the door of the Weasley joke shop. Unexpectedly, the people here were not as many as they had imagined. Only 1 or 2 hurried wizards holding a paper bag came out of the shop. "Don't you say they have a batch of goods ready for Christmas?" "How does it feel like no one is there?" Hermione asked strangely, looking at the deserted shop at the door. "I see those shops along the way. You are full of people inside and out." "This is indeed a bit weird." Ryan went to the shop door and opened the door to make a move in motion. "But what happened here? We can just go in and ask. We are already here anyway." After entering the store, Lane found that the store that was full of piles now looks more full. Half of the stores are stacked with large and small packages that have been wrapped in colorful wrapping paper, and the Weasley twins, together with several employees, waved their magic wands to wrap this kind of wrapping paper in more boxes. "What are you doing?" Looking at the wrapping paper that is flying under the magic and the various products that are being packaged, Ryan asked the Weasley twins, "Why don't many people come to the store?" "That's because we don't have enough staff this year and there is no way to guarantee business." Fred stopped his work and looked up. "So we simply changed our approach this year to take full-hour orders to sell Christmas products." "Looking at the current situation, your new sales method works well," Hermione said while looking at the pile of goods. "You really are geniuses in store operations." "That is of course." George, who was busy, said proudly. This year there are really many orders from Hogwarts. This may be because Hogsmeade Day was cancelled for security reasons. Everyone hopes to take advantage of Christmas to buy one. Of course, in addition, the new developer potion that Ryan developed before is also very useful. The new developer potion. What is that? Hermione asked strangely. I know that the wizard's photos are active because of the special developer potion, but what's special about the new developer potion you just said? Of course, Fred said, Lynn's newly developed potion can use those color films to wash out colorful photos, so our advertising posters are universal color photos. Now it seems that the wizarding world is the first. The color magic poster works very well. From the perspective of order quantity, at least 1/3 of Hogwarts students have ordered goods from us. Sounds great. Hermione looked at the pile of goods on the side and counted them. But Hogwarts shouldn't be able to sell so much. You're right. Except for Hogwarts goods and some scattered orders, the big head is mainly from the newly opened bank. Fred said, as a Weasley family, he certainly knows something about that bank. The bank ordered a large amount of goods from us because of Ryan's relationship and prepared to give it to its customers at Christmas time, saying it was to give feedback to customers. No wonder that the group of Pandora are considered to be the most business-savvy guys in the magical world of heaven, and even the tricks of sending small gifts to attract customers are unacceptable. However, the effect of doing so does not look good, especially after accepting decades of hard-to-do and ugly services. The wizards have an excellent view of the warm service of these Pandaran. At least from the information sent by Xung Duosu, the number of people who have deposited money in the bank has been increasing recently, and many financial activities have begun to gradually start. The entire bank is on track. It seems there are many things in it, Ryan said, pulling out his wand. Let's help you. It will be Christmas the day after tomorrow. Anyway, we'd better handle this shipment as soon as possible. After joining Ryan and Hermione, the speed of packing these goods has accelerated a lot. Finally packed all the goods before lunch. Afterwards several staff members floated the goods like an owl post office with a floating charm. It's finally possible to go on holiday. Fred, who watched the employees leave, said that after mailing the items away, they would go home and prepare for the annual Christmas holiday. Our mother prepared a lot of food at home this time and was going to use a sumptuous dinner to repay our previous half-year's hard work. Unfortunately, our brothers and sisters couldn't come back this time. Ron and Ginny can't go home? Hermione asked strangely. If Ron doesn't go home, I can still understand that. After all, he will take the new test this year and may need to review in school. But Ginny did not think. Why didn't she go back? Ron can review at school. Don't joke. George looked disgusted. He must have taken advantage of this opportunity to play crazy, and I even doubt that he will probably go to his homework on the last day before the end of the holiday. So why didn't he and Ginny go home? Ryan also asked curiously, because he felt that in this situation, people should want to be with their parents and relatives, rather than staying alone in Hogwarts Castle. Don't you know? By the way, you may not know, after all, you have been fighting in the wild during this time, and you may not have received any news. George began to feel a little puzzled, but soon thought that Lane had been wandering around to fight and rescue innocent people. It is normal to not know some news. This is the case. This year, Hogwarts asked everyone to stay in school on Christmas holidays. www.mtlnovel.com. This is a decision made out of safety considerations, Fred explained, since last time after the Hogwarts Express attack. The school thought that students should be kept in a safe castle as much as possible, rather than going outside to be exposed to the danger of Death Eater attacks, especially since Death Eaters are now crazy. Start attacking all people indiscriminately, not even the students. Understand the school professor's ideas. Ryan said that at least after the last Death Eater attack, they knew that there was no lower limit for Death Eaters to start. In this case, the little wizards scattered because of the holiday. It is too easy to become the target of the attackers. In particular, many small wizards live in enemy-occupied areas and cannot be protected at all. Oh, has anything happened in school recently? Lane asked, because he was going to Hogwarts Castle with Hermione for a while, and was a little worried that they would not go to school because of the new security arrangements. No major changes, Fred said. Except with your help, the witch problems and materials problems of the little wizards have been completely resolved, and the teaching activities have been put on the right track. I have not heard that there are what changes are worth mentioning. At this time, no change is the best change. Lane nodded. Hermione and I are going downstairs to make lunch now, and then we will eat together. After dinner, we have to go to the castle to do something. Good idea. We were hungry after a busy morning. George said, I am looking forward to your lunch now. Although our mother's cooking level is very high, we have not learned. Eat 3 brooms all day. The package here feels too bad. Chapter 692, Communication in the Principal's Office. After having a lunch with Weasley twins, Lane left the joke shop and went straight to Hogwarts Castle. The defense around the castle is much better than before, especially the size of the patrol is much larger than before. Although many of these patrols are composed of volunteers among the temporary residents who recently lived in Hogsmeade, the level may not be very high, but their appearance proves from the side that the previous panic has slowly ended, and everything is beginning to be on track. Ryan originally planned to return to their room to deal with something, and then chat with friends. When they walked upstairs from the entrance hall, a fire burst in front of them, and a little phoenix flew out of the fire. After throwing them a roll of tight parchment paper, another blaze disappeared. "It looks like Professor Dumbledore. I think he found me as soon as we walked into the castle," Ryan said after taking the note, and then unfolded it. "Like our manor, as a building complex with a lot of magic circles and alchemy products, its owner can always control any information in this building." "So what is written on the note?" Hermione asked after watching Ryan unfold the note. "We are just back from the outside to the school. Is there anything that Dumbledore needs to find us so urgently?" "I don't know, because it just invited us to go to his office for a cup of tea." Lane handed the small note to Hermione. Hermione saw that the note was only a simple invitation and today the password of the principal's office. Nothing else. Sandwich Marshmallow. After coming to the entrance of the principal's room to read the exit order, the stone monster jumped aside and let out the spiral staircase of the principal's room. Hovering up to the oak door, Lane knocked on the door, and the door opened. The principal's office is still the same as before. Around office is full of small strange sounds. The silverware of Professor Dumbledore was still placed on the small table next to it and the partition on the back of the desk, each rotating, spraying out smoke after smoke. The principal's phoenix stood on a tall gilded perch behind the door as before, and when Ryan looked at it, he screamed and greeted Ryan. Just as Ryan looked at the office with a bit of nostalgia, the door opened with a squeak. Principal Dumbledore walked out of a door above, then stood on the platform and greeted Ryan and them. "Ryan, Hermione, it's great to see you again after such a long time." "We are also very happy to see you, Mr. Principal." After watching the principal walk down the stairs and do the high-back chair, Ryan nodded slightly and said, "Is there anything you want to see us today?" "Sit down first, you don't have to be so nervous." Dumbledore waved his wand, and two back chairs appeared at the large desk, along with a small coffee table in the middle of the back chair. "Just something very simple and want to chat with you." "Black tea and refreshments, right? Really, your tastes are not like those of young people of your age. Instead, they are like the tastes of people of my age," Principal Dumbledore said after watching Ryan sitting down as his words fell. A pot of black tea and a small saucer appeared on the coffee table. "Thank you for these refreshments." The familiar tastes of black tea and snacks at school are always so nostalgic. Although I only left here for a month, I feel that I have been away for a long time. After drinking half a cup of black tea and ate it. After ordering snacks, Ryan put down the cup and said with some emotion, "Yes, the school will always leave us with some indelible memories." Dumbledore nodded sympathetically, and then said, "The reason why I hurried to call you back after you returned to school today, there is one thing that needs to be discussed with you." Ryan they heard Professor Dumbledore start to speak and lean forward slightly, staring at Dumbledore in a serious listening gesture, only to see Professor Dumbledore said, "I heard that a few days ago, you raided many manors." "Yes, you are right," Ryan admitted. "In the previous month, we were fighting almost every day." It has to be said that the power of the Death Eaters now comes mainly from their manor. The various products produced and the command of the local Death Eaters in the UK. After destroying part of the manor and eliminating a group of local Death Eaters, we can clearly see that the resistance of the Death Eaters is being weakened, and the innocent are victimized. The number of people has also greatly reduced. "I know, I also got the news from my channel before," Professor Dumbledore nodded and said. "But I must say, children, your approach is a little too radical." "Radical?" Ryan repeated the word, then said a little puzzled. "Do you think my actions are radical?" "But I don't think my actions are radical. I can even say that my actions are mild." "Isn't this radical?" After raising his hands and holding his half-moon-shaped glasses, Dumbledore took a serious look at Ryan's face, as if he wanted to see what Ryan was thinking. "You must know, the wizard who died a month ago is almost the same as the wizard who died when Voldemort was most active in the last war. This is a huge loss for the wizard in Britain." "But, Professor, I can guarantee that everyone we killed deserves to die." Hermione couldn't help but stood up and argued, "Among the people we killed, the blood of the innocent was on our hands. Either a deadly spell was used in the battle. It can be said that even if we took so many lives, every killing was to save people." "I know, I know." Dumbledore shook his hand to signal Hermione to sit down, and then said, "I assure you that I never thought that what you did was for an evil goal. As they are over 100 years old, and I can trust my own vision at this point. It's just that I think the means you have taken have crossed certain boundaries." "Yes, we know that killing is the worst method," Ryan said in a quick tone. "But it is undeniable that sometimes it is also the most effective method." "Just now, for example, do you think that in the face of massacres is there any better way for melancholy Death Eaters to stop their evil deeds than now?" Dumbledore sighed softly www.mtlnovel.com and at the same time showed a tired expression. "I know that some people can't look back now, many of them used to be my students. I really didn't expect the situation to be like this. I still remember when they entered the school, they were so naive and lively." Watching Dumbledore began to recall the past. Ryan and Hermione glanced at each other without interrupting him. Ryan knew that Dumbledore had experienced many things when he was young. He lost his parents, sister, and brothers, and had no contact with his old brother. He turned against his like-minded friends and lovers. So after experiencing so many things in solitude, Dumbledore really put all his energy on the students. Therefore, the situation in which the Hogwarts graduates are now fighting is not what the principal wants to see. In addition to the various pressures after the outbreak of the war, Professor Dumbledore actually has a lot of pressure in his heart. As a leader of the White Wizard, he cannot reveal his weak side in front of everyone. So now Professor Dumbledore has not maintained the most powerful White Wizard appearance after meeting someone at least equal in strength. So that the mood fluctuated a little, and began to talk about some past events. Ryan did not interrupt, but listened quietly. After all, Ryan knew that if he had psychological pressure, he could find many people to talk to. And Dumbledore's identity is only for everyone to tell him. He can't tell others. Under such a bad situation now, Mr. Principal must have accumulated a lot of pressure. Having a chance to talk is a good thing for everyone. Chapter 693, Discussion and Outlook. Sorry. After half an hour of whispers, Professor Dumbledore took off his glasses and wiped them, then said, "I'm sorry. Older people sometimes like to remember the past and keep you two waiting for a long time." "It doesn't matter, Professor," Ryan said with a smile. "From the stories you just told, we know a lot of things that we never knew before, which is conducive to our next move." "Oh, what did you hear?" Dumbledore looked at Ryan curiously with his blue eyes. He had just said those things. On the one hand, it was indeed a bit gaff, and on the other hand, he hoped to pass one of the stories. One person reminded Ryan that the people they killed in the war also had family members and friends. They were all alive people, not just an abstract concept such as a brutal Death Eater. So Dumbledore was now very curious about what Ryan had gotten from the words he had just made, so he put his elbows on the table and made a serious listening gesture. "I found that the connections between wizards in Britain far exceeded my previous imagination." Ryan said that from Professor Dumbledore's story, Ryan found that the networks of pureblood families built were more complicated than they thought. It also reminded him that even in the original text, even if the contradiction between the two parties has reached the point, but in the 7th year, pureblood like Neville and Ginny can still be taught in school. Even if they organized resistance activities, those Death Eaters did not hurt their lives. This is not a simple one, and the reason for not wanting to waste the life of a pureblood wizard can be explained. For us, this means that there are still many things we have to do to avoid harming those innocent people. Ryan looked at Dumbledore's statement. "I think there should be many people asking you to restrain us behavior. Stop killing." "Yes." Professor Dumbledore nodded and admitted, "Someone asked me here to stop your kind of killing and destruction." "Children, know that any killing will leave an indelible mark on the soul." "Scars." "Of course, I am not asking you to take into account a lot of things in combat. That is unreasonable. I just hope that you can reduce some killings within your ability. We are not killers. You can see from our previous actions that we did not even harm the house elves who attacked us, because they attack us only as a result of being ordered. They are just tools only." Ryan explained. "Everyone we killed has definite evidence that they should indeed die. No one of us has the right to decide the lives of others. No one." Principal Dumbledore raised his voice. "So it is an inappropriate act for you to execute the deadly Death Eaters after the war. So what should we do?" Ryan discovered that Dumbledore was not shy about killing enemies in battle. After all, he was also a person who had experienced many brutal wars, whether it be wizards or moles. But he hopes that everything can run in a certain order, such as trying those criminals and punishing them according to the crime, instead of direct execution like the original Revenge. "I don't know." Unexpectedly, Dumbledore did not preach as before, but shook his head in distress. "After all, when you are surrounded by enemies, you still have to protect those hostages from leaving. It is not appropriate to force you to bring those people back to trial. This will put you in danger. If you let them go, they will cause more casualties later." "Yes, this is the biggest problem we encountered, Professor." Hermione added. "Killing is indeed a terrible choice, but this method can ensure that they will never do evil again, and no innocent people will be hurt." "You guys, alas." Professor Dumbledore sighed for a long time. In the war years, many things could not achieve the perfect ending, even if it was Professor Dumbledore who was known as the most powerful White Wizard. In the face of the current situation, there is no solution that can achieve the best of both worlds. After all, this has been the principle for many years. Dumbledore, who is more than 100 years old, is not a saint, but he is a really good person. So from his standpoint, he couldn't accuse Ryan of wrongly protecting their innocent moles, even if such behavior was accompanied by killing. At the same time, he can't deny that Ryan's previous methods, although radical, were a very reasonable choice at that time. "Okay, we won't discuss this topic anymore." Dumbledore waved weakly, and a tired feeling appeared from his body. The core of the wizarding world is still power, so for Ryan, this power is basically the same level as him. and is obviously a friendly person. Dumbledore could only use persuasion instead of forcing orders. So when he found that he couldn't find a reason for persuasion that he had internally recognized, Dumbledore automatically gave up the discussion of the question just now and began to talk about the next question. In his eyes, defeating Voldemort and restoring the order of the British magic world are the most important. Some things that are not satisfactory in the process can be temporarily put aside. Not to mention Ryan's killings did not conform to the Principal's ethics, but from another perspective. The damage caused by Ryan's previous actions attracted the attention of Voldemort and the Death Eaters, reduced the pressure on Dumbledore's side. In addition to the question about the killing just now, there is your previous behavior on the destruction of manor and plantations everywhere. I hope you can give me a reasonable explanation. Soon Professor Dumbledore asked in a good mood the next question. Your destruction can't be repaired in a short time, and even the damage in many places is almost the same as the reconstruction. You know, these ancient magic plant plantations and miraculous creature breeding gardens. www.mplnovel.com. The house elf workshop and mines are an important part of the British magic world, and also one of the heritage of the British magic world. If you do this, we will lose a lot even if the war is won. But that's something we need to consider after the victory of our war, isn't it? Ryan said solemnly. If we can't completely cut off the sources of Death Eaters' wealth, I don't think we need to consider the future of the British magic world. Moreover, these estates have now been mortgaged to American wizards. To be precise, they do not belong to Britain. After destroying those estates, we not only cut off part of the cash flow and material flow of the Death Eaters. At the same time, it also caused a lot of bad debts to the American Gu Ling Pavilion and the American Magic Congress that were standing behind the Death Eaters in the Atlantic on the premise that the cousins of our group are unwilling to go directly to the battle. A large number of losses will force them to stop the loss in time. That is to reduce the secret funding for Death Eaters. The core is that we already have a way to make up for these losses. Hermione added to some worried Professor Dumbledore. Our intensive plantations in the north can provide a large part of the resources. In addition, during the period around Christmas, I will stay here to build several plantations or workshops in our control area to make up most of the gap. Of course it would be good news if this is the case. Dumbledore touched his white beard. But as far as I know, you may need a lot of resources and wealth to support it. Please be assured that I have absolutely no problem in this regard. Ryan assured the Principal Dumbledore. Chapter 694, Talk. In Hogwarts Principal's office, Lane promised Principal Dumbledore that he could quickly recover some of the resources produced by the British magic world and make up for the loss of production capacity caused by his own destruction. This is not perfunctory or obscured. After integrating several world technologies, Ryan has created a new type of plantation that can be operated with a small amount of labor. It's just that because these manors are likely to have fierce competition with those pureblood manors, Ryan has not taken these things out. However, although these things have not been brought up in this world, as an experiment and in order to obtain sufficient resources, Lane has established 3 such cultivations in the world of the Lord of the Rings and the world of Song of Ice and Fire. Garden. After nearly a year of operation, Lane can confirm that all of these can be run smoothly for a long time. In addition to the 6 plantations in these 2 worlds, a little hamster-like hobbyist and well-resourced Lane also prepared 6 sets of all the necessary equipment and raw materials for the plantation, which can be used in a short time. 6 new estates were built. This time, Ryan planned to take out 3 of them and set up 3 manor houses in his own control area. It seems that you have considered a lot of things in advance, Dumbledore said slowly, staring at Ryan, and their blue eyes became like deep lake water. I hope you can honestly answer my last question. Why did you choose to split the British magic world? We didn't. Hermione wanted to argue, but Ryan put up a hand to stop her, and then asked Professor Dumbledore. We admit that we are consciously dividing the magic world, but we are here to make the end of this war a truly peaceful start, not a truce less than 20 years away. Dumbledore was able to see his own layout, which was what Lane expected. Before, whether he was an attack on a pureblood wizard and a vassal, or introduced an independent financial institution, even by destroying and rebuilding those magic resource production bases, the transfer of overall industry dominance. All of this clearly shows Ryan's intention to re-establish a magic society. As a centenarian who has experienced so many things, Headmaster Dumbledore could not have seen Ryan's rear hand. What makes Ryan a little strange is that Professor Dumbledore hasn't talked about this with himself until now, which is a little late in some ways. I hope you will know that the purpose of war is for peace, Dumbledore solemnly said. And everything you do is actually tearing up the British Wizarding Society, and it will seriously intensify the conflict between pureblood, mixed blood and more family wizards. Of course I know this, Lane nodded. But now the British Wizarding world has actually split. Since the mysterious man established the London Ministry of Magic with his help from the pureblood family, the British Wizarding world has split openly into 2 hostile groups. And all this stems from mistakes after the last war. Oh? Where do you think the mistake is? Dumbledore looked at Ryan with interest. After the last war, we walked out of the shadow of the war at the fastest speed and continued to maintain the position of the British wizards in the world. allowing the British wizarding world to resume prosperity in the shortest time. It seems that this is already a good result. But it also lays the roots of the current war, Ryan pointed out bluntly. The last war was more provoked than the mysterious man's ambitions. It was better after the previous secrecy law was revised. After the number of hemp seeds and mixed-race wizards has greatly increased, the pureblood families who feel that their interests have been violated have made a counterattack, and after the defeat of the mysterious man and the Death Eaters, the British magic world did not seriously liquidate those who provoked the war. A large number of Death Eaters who held extremely serious lineage discrimination and participated in the last war were not dried. They still retained their ideas, their status, and their wealth and resources. Speaking of this, Ryan looked at Dumbledore very seriously. You might think that after the last compromise, the wizards of these pureblood families should be grateful, should repent, and should correct their deep-rooted prejudices, but you are wrong. At least from this rapid fall of the Ministry of Magic and in the series of battles that followed, we can see that those people did not repent at all. Instead, they bury those hatreds in their hearts, ready to break out at any time, and once again invest in their so-called clean cause. I think even if the mysterious man didn't resurrect, the war will break out. Finally, Ryan pointed out a cruel conclusion inferred by him. As soon as I went to school, I heard a popular word from Slytherin, mud type. At the Quidditch World Cup, I saw a meeting of former Death Eaters. This represents some kind of dirty and dangerous thinking. It has been circulating in the minds of many people. Last time your kindness only exchanged for their weak mocking of you and preparation for the next war. You are right, boy. You are right. Professor Dumbledore looked exhausted. He did not justify himself as Ryan imagined, because the current situation is what Ryan said. The enemies in the last war are back this time, and the war is waged again for the same reason. At that time, I just hoped that more people in the British magic world would survive to minimize the loss of the British magic world. Professor Dumbledore began to tell Ryan about the past. When I was young, I experienced a brutal wizard war that spread across Europe. A large number of people died in that war, and since then, I have hoped to minimize the loss in dealing with the problem. Your idea is good, Professor. I think the only purpose of a reasonable war is to stop the war, Hermione said after listening to it for a long time. But I have to say that last time Grindelwald provoked in that war, the pureblood families that had dominated the whole of Europe except the United Kingdom were hit hard. In this way, they could just complete the integration after the war to make up for the contradiction between pure-blooded hybrids and hemp seed wizards. But the United Kingdom does not have www.mtlnovel.com under your protection. Grindelwald's power has never been to the United Kingdom. The British wizards still retain the oldest social structure and more deadly old ideas. As the society goes further development, hemp seed and the mixed breed wizards are increasing, but stubborn pureblood wizards occupy almost all resources. In this case, war will break out one day. The only difference is who will start first. After reading a large number of books recommended by Ryan, especially those related to politics and history and practiced in several worlds, Hermione had a deeper understanding of the causes of several wizarding wars. One of the most important understandings is when the power of a group of people is not directly proportional to their status. These wars in the wizarding world are inevitable. And Professor, you have also experienced 2 world wars in the Mole world before. Ryan went on to say, the different development directions of Germany after the 2 wars have already explained the problem. So we think that this time only liquidate those lineagists comprehensively. Only in the next time will we achieve truly long-lasting peace, and everything we do now is to achieve this goal. Yes, Hermione nodded, then gave a slightly awkward smile to Principal Dumbledore. You know, we are still young, so we really don't want to be at war or preparing for war in our lives. Okay, this time you will do what you want. After Dumbledore finished speaking, the whole person leaned on the back of the chair, as if exhausted. But you must not forget your original intentions in the war. Chapter 695, Longbottoms. After discussing a series of content about the war, Professor Dumbledore showed a very tired look. Seeing this scene, Ryan and Hermione stood up very appreciatively and bowed to the principal, and then walked to the door of the principal's room together. Ryan, can you tell me why you want to do so many things for this war? Professor Ryan Dumbledore suddenly asked when they were about to leave the door. Because I can feel that your sense of belonging to the magic world is not so strong, and as a high-level alchemist, you don't need to rely on the British magic world at all. So what kept you here? The reason is complicated. Ryan and Hermione glanced at each other here. But if you want to understand the original reason, I think it may be an ideal from my 2nd grade. I want to fight for my ideals. Professor Dumbledore did not say anything after listening to this sentence, but shook his hand to signal Ryan. They left. Ryan and they nodded at Professor Dumbledore and left the principal's office along the spiral staircase. Principal Dumbledore asked us today to tell me why these things are. After coming to the corridor on the next floor, Hermione recalled the conversation in the office and asked Ryan, because what we have done recently is so much like what the mysterious man did when he was young. Lane explained to Hermione. For example, killing people who are hostile to oneself, or for example, organizing manpower and forces that tend to favor oneself. So Professor Dumbledore wants to make sure that we will not be the second mysterious person, and will not become Britain again after this war. A new threat from the magic world. We obviously don't, Hermione said anxiously after listening to Ryan's analysis. Everything we are doing is to make the British magic world better. How can the principal think that way? Power, money, power. These the things that others have been searching for are enough for us. And all these things in the British magic world are not worth mentioning to us. But Mr. Principal does not know. Then Ryan said through the Phoenix brand. He didn't know that we have several worlds, and he inferred from common sense that there are too few people who do not pursue power, money, and power. Mr. Principal is understandable if he is a little worried. Therefore, I think Professor Dumbledore came to us today to remind us of these things and avoid us from going astray, and to let the principal dispel these doubts. I think that in addition to the fact that we are not mysterious people in the passage of time, there is no other way to do this than a careerist. The principal will not relax our vigilance because of our answer today. Well, what you said is very reasonable. Let time prove it all. Anyway, we have no plans to rule the British magic world like a mysterious man. Hermione shrugged and answered directly. Then she went with Ryan. Walked towards the library, because they have some materials to look up in the library. The wizards have a longer history of drawing accurate maps than muggles. In addition, they will add some magic-related content when drawing maps. The reason why Ryan is going to the library is to be able to find the location of the 3 magical plantations after the map is easy to determine. After all, the more appropriate the location, the lower the cost of the plantation, and the better the effect of the last planted herbs. The reason why they came to school today, in addition to approaching Christmas to chat with friends, has a very important purpose, is to collect some materials that have not been noticed before. Only after talking with Principal Dumbledore, Ryan felt that they now need to inquire in advance about the information needed for the establishment of the new plantation that they intended to put a little bit behind. After visiting the library to search for some materials, Lane discovered that there are actually many places in Scotland that are suitable for the establishment of magic plantations. It's just that the British pureblood families were mainly distributed in the rich England region, so they also opened these magical plantations near the manor in England for convenience. This is why Ryan mainly fought in the English region. In fact, in history, the power of the British pureblood family has always been concentrated in the English region. When the Big Four chose to establish Hogwarts in distant Scotland, it was not to avoid the pureblood families that had monopolized magic education. So from a certain point of view, Ryan is doing what they are doing is actually similar to what the Big Four were. It is through their own strength that they try to change the British magic world, and then make the British magic world more in line with their own minds. Soon after Ryan entered the library, the bell of the class rang. Soon after school, the students poured into the library to prepare for their homework. Hi, Ryan, Hermione, are you back today? Just as Ryan looked at a map near Dundee, he was suddenly photographed on his shoulder, and then a familiar voice came from behind. Navi, long time no see. Turning his head, it was really Neville Longbottom standing behind him. As a talented student, Neville worked hard to make up for it. Before, when Ryan was at school, he could see the lesson almost every day. After he went straight to the library, he began to write homework and review today's content. Yeah, it's been a long time. Neville nodded and said, by the way, I am here today to thank you specifically because your previous potion has made my parents start to recover. The last time I visited them, they seemed to recognize my grandmother. Wait, now London is completely under the control of Death Eaters, especially in places like St. Mungo. How did you go to visit your parents? After listening to Neville, Ryan had no time to answer Hermione. Ask first. My parents are not in Street Mungo now, Neville explained to Ryan and them. After the mysterious man took control of the Ministry of Magic at that time, my grandmother and I transferred my parents out with the help of several therapists. www.mtlnovel.com began to live at home, and the crisis became more and more serious. My grandmother, along with the rest of the Longbottom family, gave up those houses in danger and moved to Hogsmeade. The Hogsmeade Magical Hospital was established more than a month ago, and my grandmother sent my parents to the hospital. Thanks to the proposal of Merrim therapist, now serious wife, they used a batch of condensed spices and magic potions for soul healing that you donated to the hospital a while ago to my parents. They look good. That was what I prepared for the group of rescued hostages before. Many of them were hurt by the heart-draining curse. Lane told Neville. Originally, these medicines are mainly for those who have just been hurt. If it is useful to your parents, I will go back this time and try to adjust the formula to see if it can be inferred that it is suitable for your parents based on the original formula. That's so, thank you, Neville said excitedly, and then sobbed. As a result, the three were driven out by Mrs. Pins because of the loud voice. Sorry, I was so excited just now. Neville apologized to Ryan in the corridor. It hurts you to be kicked out together. It's okay, we have basically checked everything, Ryan said, so it's no problem to be kicked out now. Yes, we have considered the drug just now for patients who are more seriously injured, so it has been some of the initial test products have appeared. But I hope to see your parents to confirm the specific method of preparation. Chapter 696, Anonymous letter. The day before Christmas, Ryan and Hermione spent a day in a spaceship to place a batch of observation magic props to collect data in the 7 previously selected locations. Until the sun started to go west, the sun turned everything on the earth into orange-red. Lane and the two of them finally dragged their tired bodies back to Hogsmeade. Wait to retrieve those props the morning after tomorrow. After stepping on the thick snow and entering the town gate and coming to the street, Lane said to Hermione, because we have to analyze the conditions at different times throughout the day. The magic flow of the location is different. Then analyze the data to select the most suitable location, and arrange the cultivation of different magic plants according to the magic flow of the selected location. After surveying for a whole day, I can feel that this work is really a bit complicated. Hermione pressed her hand behind her sore waist because of the installation of magical instruments. Yes, how much do you put in? After opening the space door just now, I saw that the materials you built for the 3 estates were stored in a warehouse. There are nearly 100 warehouses in that place. That's something that is reserved for the outbreak of several large-scale wars or disasters in the world. I have a total of 3 similar warehouse clusters in different worlds, and the warehouse cluster of the End World is just one of them. Lane explained. The materials in each warehouse group can maintain the life of 100,000 people for 3 months, in addition to various magic raw materials that can maintain the normal use of 3,000 ordinary wizards in the second half of the normal period. Is this the modern National Reserve? Hermione murmured. No wonder you can destroy the important production institutions of the British magic world without hesitation, because you are confident that you can fill those gaps. Yes, Ryan nodded seriously. Recently, most of the products in Weasley's joke store are produced using these reserve resources, but I think the resources will be provided locally after these plantations are established. So what is the demand for magical ores? Hermione asked. Before the mines we haven't discovered, could this gap be completely covered by similar ores you got from other worlds? Don't forget the trade with Heaven and the underground trade with Europe, Ryan said, tilting his head slightly and approaching Hermione. The Hogwarts Ministry of Magic was not idle when we were fighting. They have succeeded, recaptured more than 60% of the overseas trade channels before the outbreak of the war. This is enough for us. After all, the United Kingdom was not the main source of those magical minerals. These things mainly depend on imports. After listening to Ryan's explanation, Hermione nodded. At this time, an owl flew towards them, and then dropped a letter when flying over them. This evening is Christmas Eve. Who'll write to us at this time? Hermione checked the letter on the ground and picked it up. This is actually an anonymous letter. Anonymous letter? Ryan was also aroused interest. He was curious why someone would send such a thing to himself. Understand that when the Hogsmeade town is on alert, such letters cannot be mailed in from outside the town with ordinary owls. The only way is to release owls in Hogsmeade town. Most of the cases where anonymous letters can be mailed are not friendly people. Ryan couldn't figure out who would spend a lot of energy sneaking into the town just to send a letter. There is only one photo in the envelope. Hermione had checked the envelope at this time, and after careful inspection inside and out, only one photo was taken out of it, and a purple ink was written on the back of the photo. Address of the newly built area in Hogsmeade town. What's strange in the photo? Hermione said after taking a last look at the photo before the sun went down, and then handed the photo to Ryan. It looks like a tall glass for drinking wine, but the feet are a little short. Lane took the photo and looked at it seriously, and found that this photo is a bit old. But after a closer look, Ryan still found that it was not a goblet, but a strange crucible with one leg. The crucible was sealed in a transparent substance, and the entire transparent substance was placed on a stone table. It may be because the person taking the picture is some distance away from the stone platform, so everything on the stone platform and the stone platform looks very small and a little fuzzy. That's why Hermione considers this thing to be a glass. So let's go to the address after the photo first. Ryan was aroused by the photo, so he proposed. Anyway, there is still a little time for dinner, and this place is at Hogwarts, Germany. There should be no major danger. You are right. Hermione thought for a while and said, if I remember correctly, this place is not too far from the temporary residence of the Weasleys. We can take a look first. After walking for 3 or 4 minutes along the main road in the town, they turned a corner on the path towards the Pig's Head Bar. Soon, they came to the townhouse in front of the destination. At this time it was already dark, but the candles hung on the tree to celebrate Christmas and the street lamps on the road illuminated everything clearly. Look, No. 7A South District. Lane whispered and looked at the house, and soon they came to the gate of No. 7A South District. This is a standard new house in the town of Hogsmeade. The main building is a 2-story red brick building with a pointed black roof and small windows on the roof for ventilation of the attic. There seems to be no one in the room. Hermione glanced at the house through the iron gate of the courtyard and said, this is a very obvious thing, because today is Christmas Eve. People who live in Hogsmeade use mistletoe branches early on, and the lights decorate the house beautifully. The house in front of it had no light at all, and there was no decoration outside. Of course, this is no surprise. www.mtlnovel.com. After all, it was more necessary to build a house, so there are indeed many temporary houses that are now unmanned. For example, there are several rooms on this road without people. However, unlike the unoccupied rooms, the snow on the iron gate of the house's courtyard fell to the ground. At the same time, the snow on the courtyard also left a trace of the gate opening, and there was a row of footprints leading directly to the gate. Our cave is open. Hermione read the opening curse at the iron gate, and the door opened inward. There is basically no magic defense in this unmanned house. After crossing the small yard to the door of the room, Ryan first released a bunch of pink light and penetrated the cracks of the door and windows of the house. After confirming that there was no danger in the house, he used the same unlocking spell. The door was opened. Fluorescent flashes. After entering the room, Ryan lit his wand. The furnishings in this house are no different from the other rooms on this street. They are just some simple furniture. Because the environment in this place is good, there is not much dust in the room even if you have not lived for more than 2 months. Let's look around for clues, Lane said to Hermione. I just checked that there are no magic waves in the room, so don't worry about the door key or something. But for safety, don't touch it when you see something different. Understood? Hermione nodded, then raised her wand and followed Ryan. Because the temporary housing is not large, they quickly searched the ground floor and cellar. Everything is normal here. But when they walked to the workshop on the second floor, the two found something on the desk in the workshop that should not appear here. Chapter 697, Book of Fairy Tales. Before, Hogsmeade prepared some simple furniture and did some processing when constructing this temporary house. For example, in the workshop where the wizards need to put some simple protection spells on this house. But the furniture in the house is very simple. Only a shelf, a table and a chair are placed. And now, after they enter the door, Ryan finds that there should be a book on the empty table. The book is not very large, and it is about the size of a normal textbook. But the whole book looked very shabby. The black cover was spotted and peeled off in several places. Checked it several times with magic. After confirming that there is nothing abnormal or harmful on the book, they walked to the front of the table and then stepped forward to start looking at the old book on the table. Why is the book The Story of Shirwanbaidu? Hermione once read this book. She didn't know why someone would lead them over and put this book in this place. After all, this book in the wizarding world, it can basically be considered that every family will have a book, similar to the Andersons' fairy tales or Green fairy tales in the Mole world. It is strange to draw them with an anonymous letter for this book. This book is a bit different from ordinary books. Ryan picked up the book on the table and looked at it carefully. The Shirwanbaidu story collection in our hands seems to be the earliest batch, written in Rooney, because many books have been deleted in the later period. And I now recognize this. The origin of the book is because I once saw a book similar to this book at Professor Dumbledore. Why delete the contents of these books? Hermione didn't understand. It's just a storybook. Although it's very different from the fairy tales we read when we were kids, it looks positive and sunny as a whole, and it is also very suitable for children to read. I don't think which stories here need to be was deleted. This book is really no problem for us, but for the wizards who rule the magic world, there are some stories in this book that have a clear pro-mal tendency. And what is worse is that the book was released at early 5th century, early 15th century. As a student of in the history of magic, Hermione suddenly thought of what happened in that era. Do you mean, is it because of the witch hunt? It is true. The persecution of wizards intensified in Europe at that time. Many people in the magic world felt that casting a spell on the plague pig next door to the mole neighbor was equivalent to actively adding firewood to the fire that burned them. Therefore, this book seems a bit outdated after its birth, so some wizards changed the content of the book to make it of an obvious anti-mole position. For example, in the set of books I found at Sirius's home, I changed the stories that helped ordinary people into ordinary people persecuting wizards, and then the crucible that came alive to eat ordinary people's stories. Ryan explained. Race hatred, racial conflict, plus crucible cannibalism. I think this story is really not suitable for children to tell. Hermione commented. What are the education of those children of pure-blood family? And at that time, some people even thought that any wizard who chose to be good with mugs would be considered weak in magic and inferior in skill. For example, Brutus Malfoy, the direct ancestor of the Malfoy family, was in an anti-mole magazine. The Witcher in War wrote, "We can say with certainty that any wizard who likes mole society is a person with low intelligence, whose magic is weak and poor, and can only be found in mole waste. A little superiority. Of course, we now know that he is completely bullshit." Lane opened his hand. "I can assure you that I can win the Malfoy family alone now, and the wealth we have now far exceeds the accumulation of the Malfoy family for centuries." Hermione laughed softly after listening to Ryan's mouth. Ryan lit up an oil lamp in the room, and then looked at this fairy tale collection page by the light of the oil lamp. Soon Hermione also recovered and leaned over with Ryan to read the book together. "The person who left this book is a bit weird," Ryan said after reading the entire book. "It may be to match the cover and content of the book. All the messages in it are actually ancient Rooney. If it was not for me before, I can't understand these things if I have inherited them. This means that the former owner of this book is probably a pure-blood wizard with some family history," Hermione said. "As far as I know, The pureblood wizard family party chose to learn Guruni as a kind of identity practice. Just like those nobles in the United Kingdom who can learn Latin or Greek, all the rest of us except the two of us who were in the ancient Mojo course were wizards from the pureblood family. What you said makes sense. Ryan turned a page of the book and pointed to a line of Niven to Hermione. You see, the main messages of this book are concentrated on the pages of the wizard and the jumping pot. For example, in the title, he wrote, "Is this just a fairy tale?" The same sentence is in the last three brothers. There also appeared once in the story, except that there was a sign of the Deathly Hallows. That is to say, this person wants to remind us that the jumping pot is true. Hermione said with her finger on her chin. But what does this have to do with us? In this kind of war, we can't treasure hunt for adventure. The other party went around in such a big circle, certainly not to tell us an adventure clue, Ryan said with certainty. For example, there are two other comments on the story page of the jumping pot, one of which is that everyone dreams of getting such a magical treasure. Another thing is that magic is powerful. It seems that this should be left to us by some pureblood families, otherwise it won't be written like this. Hermione said, "So what do we do now? Is we using magic to track that person?" "Of course, you can't always be found at your door. Don't you know what happened?" Ryan shrugged. "I also know that the man had just struggled so much to prevent us from finding him. But I think that guy should not know that our research on soul and space has exceeded most people. When I got a book, I've started tracking, and now I can basically lock the other party's position." "Then let's go find that guy now?" Hermione asked, his face eager to try. In the 3 months since the outbreak of this war, she has completely mastered her ability. www.mentalnovel.com. At the same time, she began to feel a little bit of the battle under the influence of the power of death. The possible raid generated some interest. "Go find it tomorrow," Ryan said. "These 2 days are Christmas holidays. I think it is more appropriate for us to rest for 2 days. Anyway, I have basically locked the identity and position of the other party, and I can basically determine who the guy is." "Have you already confirmed the identity and location of the other party?" "This is really good news." Hermione nodded, and she could guess that Lion dared to guarantee the location and identity of the other party so much. It is estimated that the other party appeared after locking the other party's location, in a manner of a pureblood family. Although they attacked several mansions of pureblood families before, the main target was still plantations. After all, their goal is only to cut off each other's economic sources, not to kill for the sake of killing. At the same time, during the raid on the manor, they always leave a text after the attack to explain the reason for their attack, such as punishing the black wizard who indiscriminately killed the innocent, or saving the hostages held. Under such circumstances, some of the marginal Death Eaters who did not participate in the indiscriminate killing of innocent people and the manor was not held hostage still chose to live at home. After all, according to the history of the previous attack, Lane did not kill any innocent people by mistake. So those marginalized Death Eaters who cannot give up their homes because of the wealth and knowledge in their homes can now only choose to put the whole family's life on the ethics of the enemy, Lane, which was previously left in books and letters. The person who sent the anonymous letter traced by the traces should be one of the marginal Death Eaters. Chapter 698, Past Present. Under the gleam of the fluorescent flashing magic spell on the wand, Ryan and they took the book out of the building and restored everything to their original condition, after which the two men stepped on the thick snow under the light of the light go to the exit of the town. "I don't know how the Christmas Eve dinner was prepared in our manor today," Ryan said after glancing at the now brightly lit Weasleys' house. The Weasleys didn't know where to get a bunch of magic lanterns hanging from it in his house. There is a small Christmas tree in the small courtyard. Although a bit shabby, it is full of a warm atmosphere. The Weasley family is not a special case, as long as the room where the people live in the whole street shines warm light. At the same time, the aroma of various foods wafted throughout the street, and a warm feeling permeated everyone. "I think those skillful gentlemen should be able to surprise us." After sniffing the scent in the air, Hermione reached out and took Ryan's arm. "Although we can't spend Christmas with our parents this year, but the 6 people living in our family are happy enough to hold a small Christmas Eve dinner together." After registering at the gate of the town, Lane left Hogsmeade. When they followed the path to a place invisible to the town, Lane returned to his manor by teleporting. Walked into the hall of the manor, Ryan found that several clever hands had dressed the room with a festive atmosphere. The ceiling of the hall is already covered with various colored strips and mistletoe, and there are small slab-sized lanterns gleaming in the middle. 4 Christmas trees were also placed in the 4 corners of the house, and many decorations were hung on each Christmas tree. The large dining table in front of the fireplace is now covered with a new snow-white linen tablecloth. 5 large, 1 small and 6 sets of pure gold tableware are placed in front of the corresponding chairs. There are also several exquisite crafts in the center of the table. "Master, can I start now?" After changing clothes, a Mr. Kieofu floated in and asked Ryan. "Everyone is almost ready. You can hold a banquet at any time." Soon, everyone in the family sat on their own chairs. At the same time, Mr. 3 Kieozu brought the delicious food prepared before and put it on the table. The plate was filled with fat and bright roasted goose, various barbecues neatly placed on the plate and placed on the small silver plate the variety of sauces and the vegetable salad that looks very fresh on a crystal plate. May the war end soon. I wish our future is getting better and better. Ryan, as the host here, raised an elf fruit wine and said that after the wine, everyone began to enjoy this rich Christmas dinner. Everyone took turns telling light and interesting little stories, so that the unhappiness caused by the previous tensions was swept away. Ryan also got good news at the dining table, that both wand makers can confirm that their loved ones are now hiding in a safe place that Voldemort could not find, and the news of their loved ones during the festival is worth anyway celebrating. So when leaving the table, the two magic wand makers seemed to shake a little because they drank more wine. Ryan specifically called two robots to take care of their two elderly people. These two magic wand masters told Ryan a lot of past things after drinking high, the most important of which is how the mysterious man and the Death Eater rise. As the people who have experienced the last war, their narratives let Ryan learn more about the last war, and some of these materials have a certain guiding role in the current war. At the beginning of the last war, Voldemort only used his eloquence and appeal to promote anti-Mole ideas through relatively peaceful means, while excluding those hemp wizards. Although everyone was vigilant at this time, because there was no violence and ethnic conflicts within the wizarding world, no one except Dumbledore urged everyone to be vigilant. No one stopped Voldemort's actions. And when Voldemort gathered enough partisans, they were no longer content with propaganda or legal means. Soon, various violent incidents began to emerge one after another, and wars really broke out. At the beginning, the Ministry of Magic even had a lot of initiative. Even though many Death Eaters were born in pureblood families and received complete magic combat training, they are still lacking compared with the professionally trained professional armed personnel like the Ministry of Magic. But Voldemort's own power smoothed all the gaps. As long as he appeared on the battlefield, whether it was a or the striker would be crushed. No matter how many advantages these professional armed personnel of the Ministry of Magic can't hinder Voldemort's attack. Every time he wins, Voldemort will kill the captives who refuse to surrender, and at the same time kill the relatives of these people with his subordinates. And through the horror atmosphere created in this way, Voldemort's side can easily host more people to join the ranks of collaborators. Later, as the power increased like a snowball, the actions of Death Eaters are also more daring, such as the direct application of the soul-taking spell, or the recruitment of various dark creatures. At the same time, the Ministry Esserers and Strikers were also stunned by Voldemort's brutal warfare. They fell into a semi-paralyzed state and basically dared not enemies the Death Eaters. In this case, even Professor Dumbledore could not reverse the situation, because as the only wizard in Britain that could confront Voldemort at the time, he had too many places and people to protect, which not only dispersed his energy, but also prevented him from arriving in time every time Voldemort attacked on sight. Fortunately, in the end, Voldemort made the wrong choice to murder or baby Harry, causing the death curse to bounce back on himself, and his temporary death also made all the huge criminal organizations based on his strength in a very short time. And this is the same in this war now. Voldemort reappeared after the war, and the attacks everywhere tried to wake people's memories of horror history again. But Ryan's appearance changed all that. Is different from Dumbledore, who was born a century ago in the wizarding world, insisting on fighting habits between wizards and upholding procedural justice. As a man who grew up in the modern ordinary world for both lifetimes, Ryan's understanding of war is also the same as that of ordinary people. Therefore, at the beginning of the war, Ryan used the only guide to eliminate the enemy's vitality and war potential. Therefore, he is very different from Dumbledore in his actions. He will try to kill as many enemies as possible in battle and destroy more resources belonging to the enemy instead of Dumbledore's limited tactics, especially before. Dumbledore tends to catch those enemies alive and give them judgment, and this practice of binding his hands and feet often leads to the escape of the enemy. At the same time, the act of letting those innocent people out of humanitarianism in the previous actions also created a burden for the Voldemort side that only consumed resources but could not provide any help, and further weakened the war of the Voldemort side. Potential www.mplnovel.com. In a certain way, what Ryan does now is very similar to what Voldemort did that time, except that the subject who suffered the fear has changed. And Voldemort would not be willing to risk his life to protect his own people and property like Dumbledore, which made Ryan spread fear among Death Eaters much faster than these Death Eaters spread fear in the magic world. And Ryan's strength made Voldemort completely afraid to take the initiative to change the war situation as he did in the last war, because he knew that as long as he was entangled for a little time to let Ryan and Dumbledore merge together, he would have to pay a lot even if he did not die the price. So after the outbreak of total war, Voldemort chose to hide and try to use his absolute superiority to slowly destroy his resistance. On the one hand, this approach prevented Dumbledore and Ryan from locking his position and killing it. After all, a wizard of this level would be hard to catch if he deliberately avoided war. But on the other hand, Voldemort's evasive battle made many people see his decline, and the morale of both sides began to change slowly. Lean people on their side no longer think that Voldemort is an invincible devil as he used to, and although the Death Eaters still defer to Voldemort's brutality, he still obeyed his orders, but most people's subjective initiative greatly reduced. The behaviors that used to take the initiative around basically no longer appear. Therefore, 3 months after the outbreak of the war, that is, after Ryan and their full participation in the war, the number of missing or killed people has been greatly reduced than before. Ryan can proudly say that they have earned a peace for everyone through fighting Christmas. All the hardships and killings before were worthwhile. Chapter 699, Christmas Travel. Merry Christmas. The first thing Ryan woke up on Christmas morning was to turn around and greet Hermione on the side, then grabbed the wand at the head of the bed and waved at the curtain. The curtains quickly opened to both sides, and a warm and unglaring sunlight illuminated the entire bedroom. You are the same. Merry Christmas. Hermione also woke up at this time. She smiled and turned to kiss Ryan's cheek. Hurry up. We need to hurry up and go to the contact point to see friends and give us what is the Christmas present. After getting up quickly to wash, Ryan and they put on a thick set of clothes and teleported to the contact point more than 10 kilometers away. On the platform in the middle of a cave built at the same time as the manor, Lane saw that they saw a pile of gifts piled up in a mess. I feel that this gift is far more than in previous years. Hermione briefly observed the scale of the pile of gifts and commented, it seems that this year we have met more new friends than in the past. The process of opening a gift is very pleasant, because it can make people feel the friendship of everyone included in the gift. Most of the gifts came from some new people who made friends after the war, such as the guerrillas who followed them fighting around, the hostages who were rescued from the dark dungeons, and even picked up from the battlefield because of the materials provided by Lane before, the wizards who died or recovered. The gift from Mr. Principal this time is too precious. Ryan took out an old parchment book from Professor Dumbledore's gift bag, and he opened it immediately after looking at it for the first time. Realized that the contents of this book may be unusual, because on the title page of the book, Ryan saw the name of Nicole May, and after turning a few pages back, Lane could see from the crooked and slanted font above that when writing this book, Nicole May the body has reached a very weak level. After further examination, Ryan was surprised to find that the history of this book will not exceed 10 years. What are you looking at? Hermione asked a little curiously as she watched Ryan standing there holding a seemingly commercially available book. It's a pity that Ryan is now half a head taller than her, so she can't look directly over Ryan's shoulder like the lower grades, and can only go to his side to see what's in his hand. Professor Dumbledore's gift? But I didn't see anything strange in this book. This is just a very ordinary notebook. Ryan turned the book back to the title page and said, this is the alchemy note left by Nicole May. And judging from the year of this note and part of the content I just looked at, this is probably the last note of the Master Alchemist. This is simply too precious. Hermione said in disbelief. Why does Principal Dumbledore give this thing to you? It is impossible to say that it is because you are an alchemist. Give it to you. I dare to say that the wizard in Europe who wants this notebook may be a public lounge that can fill Gryffindor. You said that you can understand this note. If even people who don't understand can add it, maybe you can line up and go around Hogwarts Castle. Lane shrugged. Of course. I know why Professor Dumbledore gave me this thing. I guess he thinks that I am more reliable, and at the same time thinks this thing can improve my level and is more conducive to the war with the mysterious people. Now, Dumbledore's idea is easy to understand, and wizards at the level of Ryan will have their own path in the pursuit of power. It is basically impossible to change. So Dumbledore was able to give this thing to Ryan with confidence, in the hope that Ryan would have a stronger effect in the following wars. It seems that even if you disagree with him, Principal Dumbledore still thinks that you and he are still firmly in the same camp. Hermione also figured out the relationship. Yes, the place where you conflict is just an unimportant part. Professor Dumbledore, who can be the leader for a long time, will not be the kind of too old-fashioned person, and should be able to tolerate between you if the general direction is correct. Different. You are right. At least the Principal Dumbledore we know is a good person in every sense. Lane nodded. He is willing to unite all forces willing to unite under the premise of the same direction. Of course, in private, Ryan believes that this is because Dumbledore realized that even with the old wand in full force, he can only guarantee a tie with Voldemort, so, in order to kill Voldemort, he must unite himself. After counting the gifts, Ryan and they returned to the manor with the gifts. After putting all these gifts away, Lane invited Hermione. Let's go to other worlds to relax now. The battle a while ago was really exhausting. When you say that, I also feel uncomfortable all over my body. I want to relax. I used to sleep for only 4 hours a day for a month. If our body is stronger than ordinary people, I wouldn't be able to sustain it long ago. Hermione nodded. Hey, yes, can we find a world that hasn't been better this time? Of course. Ryan nodded with a smile and then dragged Hermione to the underground laboratory. Because other people lived in the manor now, they chose the underground base under the manor to avoid the eyes of the guests, lest this secret be known to others. Since you are distracted, the world level cannot be too high, because it is too high and you need to be busy fighting. But the world level cannot be too low, otherwise it doesn't make much sense, Ryan said to Hermione after coming to the underground base. So I think the 6th level world is more appropriate. What do you think? Is it the last time you knew the world of a group of vampires? Hermione thought for a moment and then nodded. I think that world is really good, but I don't know if it will be a world we are familiar with this time. Look at luck, Ryan said after opening the door leading to the world of groceries and pulled Hermione into it. Rose Crystal was sitting in a grocery store at the top of a cabinet at this time with her hands holding a set from Twilight. The smartphones in the world looked at cats and mice and giggled from time to time. After hearing the footsteps of Ryan and Hermione walking into the grocery store, she turned her head and asked, "Brother, what are you doing here?" "We plan to find a new world to relax. Do you want to come together?" Ryan sent an invitation to the doll. Of course I do." Rose Crystal put away her smartphone at the fastest speed, and then quickly lit her little head. "Finally, I can go to a new world to see it again, which is simply great." After finishing the talk, Rose Crystal took a small backpack with a space bag modified from the corner of the grocery store and carried it on his back. www.mplnovel.com. Then he flew directly to the left of Ryan and raised his arm to hold the empty hand. Then we set off. After injecting 32 offset points, the door of the grocery store turned into a vortex of blue and white light. After making sure everything was ready, Ryan took a hand through the space door. This time it's not in the forest anymore. After looking at the surroundings, Rose Crystal showed a smile. "At least this pit looks like it should have been dug out by intelligent creatures." "Yes, according to the size and design habits of the machine, it is very likely to belong to humans." Ryan glanced around and definitely concluded that as a person who has inherited the mechanical design, many machines only need to look at it can roughly infer the situation of the machine user. "Hey, it's kind of like a machine from the end of the 19th century. Hermione looked curiously at the rivet-filled steam engine below their foothold. "I visited the old factory in Manchester with my parents before. The machine is very similar to this one." 19th century was reminded by Hermione that Ryan also woke up, and everything here really looked like a mine during the first industrial revolution. But Ryan doesn't think he is just entering an era of ordinary steam industry development. After all, here is a 6th-level world, which represents the power of science and technology beyond this era. Fortunately, it is only a 6th-level world, so it should not be the most terrifying world in this background, such as the total grams of sugar or the concentration of man is too high or something. Ryan felt that he could go step by step and look at the situation before saying. Chapter 700, Castle in the Sky. Ryan's foothold this time was on a wooden board for maintenance on the side of the crane in the pit, so they could easily see the general situation of the entire pit from the top, but the people below could not see Ryan because of the obstruction. But it's not a matter of standing here all the time, so Ryan released a phantom body curse to themselves and prepared to leave here to find nearby settlements. After all, since there are mines and workers here, under normal circumstances there must be a settlement. After coming to a new world, it is very important to go to the nearest settlement. Just as Ryan was about to leave, they were alerting the surrounding rose crystals and suddenly pointed to the sky and whispered, "Brother and Grandma, Sister Granger, what are you looking at in the sky?" Ryan and Hermione immediately looked up at the place where Rose Crystal's fingers were. As a result, the two saw a spot of light falling from the clouds and falling towards where they are now. "Is this a meteor?" Hermione whispered to herself, but she quickly denied her claim. No, if it is a meteor, the speed of falling cannot be this. How is it a person?" After applying an eagle eye in front of her eyes, Hermione saw at once what the thing that was shining down. She immediately turned her head and said to Ryan, "Hurry. We have to figure out a way quickly. I can't be sure how long the magic on the child will last. In case the magic effect disappears before landing, it's generally the protagonist who plays this way, so there shouldn't be any problems." Ryan muttered inwardly, but he was also a little worried that the appearance of his group would cause the original plot to change. So he immediately summoned his pink wings and flew over to the person who fell to the sky. When he flew to a height of 50 or 60 meters and approached the person who was slowly falling from below, Ryan discovered that the girl who fell was a blue dress. She wore a pair of ponytails and a pink headband on her head. But it wasn't her own strength that caused the girl to fall slowly, but she wore a thumb-sized pendant on her neck that was emitting blue light outward. Ryan could feel that the pendant was releasing magic power, forming an effect like a slow curse. The girl himself is now in a coma. "Okay, now I know where this is." Ryan saw the girl and set up 00 reading OOKXS to understand exactly what the world is. Thank goodness, this is not a mythical world, but a relatively warm fairy tale world. As the girl was still falling to the ground in a coma, Ryan stretched out her arms and hugged the girl towards the small mountain bag above the mine. He felt that Hermione had left the mine pit with a short distance teleportation with Rose Crystal, and should now stay on the edge of the ruins beside the mine pit. Sure enough, when Ryan followed up with the souls of the two ladies and merged with them, they found that Hermione had set up a tent with magic on the edge of a building ruin and raised a fire. After seeing Ryan holding a girl and landing, Hermione greeted him. "Is it such a little girl that fell from the sky?" She said that she reached out and grabbed the girl's arm, and smoke came out of her hand to detect it. The reason for this child's coma is that he quickly lost his temperature after falling down, and at the same time he was very tired in the soul. I think it was caused by fear and restlessness before. Now give her to me. I think she is in our tent. Get a good night's sleep on this soft bed by the stove in the bedroom, and it should be fine tomorrow. Good idea. Then she said that Hermione, who had passed the girl to Ryan, watched her walk into the tent with the girl in her arms. As soon as Hermione entered the tent, Lane heard a running sound coming from a distance, and soon a teenager in shabby but neat tooling ran over with an iron can. First of all, sir, hello. It may be the temperament of Ryan and a costume that looks very expensive. After seeing Ryan through the campfire in front of the tent, the teenager seemed a little restrained, but soon he was inwardly his kindness overwhelmed. I just had a luminous girl in this direction. Did you see her? She fell to us, but the girl was cold when she fell from the sky, and she had been frightened a lot before. So I asked my wife to take her to rest in the tent. Lane turned to the front. The protagonist of this story explained. So we are not well suited to enter that tent now, but if you care about that girl, you can come over at breakfast tomorrow. I think the girl should be awake at that time. You are right, sir. It is indeed rude to enter the lady's bedroom at this time. The teenager nodded, and then said, yes, my name is Baru. How can I call you? Just call me Ryan. There is no need to add so many honorifics. Anyway, I am no bigger than how old you are. Ryan said mildly. Oh, I think you ran up in a hurry with something. Did you have anything to do? By the way, I still have to give the master a meal. Then, we will see you tomorrow morning. Baru said with a snap of his forehead, and then quickly ran to the direction of the mine where Ryan was there. It's nice to be young. There was a pretended voice behind him, and Ryan turned his head to find that the rose crystal that had just been hiding in the tent flew out of the tent and floated with his hands in the air, watching Baru going away. You are not as big as him. Watching Rose Crystal heard this sentence as if he was about to pounce on and pull his hair. Ryan quickly changed the subject. Right, how is that girl now? She's in good condition now. Hermione carefully checked and said that everything will recover after she wakes up tomorrow morning. After asking about the matter, Rose Crystal quickly recovered and said seriously. That's good, Ryan said and walked into the tent with Rose Crystal. This is an improved tent. Ryan bought the tent a few years ago and applied countless powerful magic afterwards. The tent of this tent is no less than that of some fixed buildings with magical defenses. In addition, this tent has been developed with many other functions. The child's health is fine. Ryan walked into the living room in the tent. www.mplnovel.com just saw Hermione retreat from the guest room and close the door of the guest room. I just remembered what the world is. Lane was surprised for a while, only to think that the two of them packed a lot of cultural materials when they last went to the world of Mib. The information about entertainment in that world is actually not much different from that of Ryan's previous life. So it's not too strange for Hermione to guess that this world is here. It's just that Ryan was mistaken by Hermione for thinking that Ryan didn't believe it after she paused for a moment. So she went on to say, I think this place should be the world of Sky City. The very touching fairy tale world. You guessed it right. I was just a little distracted just now. Lane said to Hermione. So this world is really suitable for us to take a good rest. Not just take a good rest, Ryan. Hermione looked at Ryan and said, don't forget, there is another very precious thing in this world, that is, it can make such a huge city fly into the sky at the same time. A flying stone that can provide sufficient energy to the city. What does this thing remind you of? Mr. Energy Nuclear. As the Ryan who had just been to the Fearin world, Ryan was reminded by Hermione and immediately thought of a baby that had been lost in that world. And there is still no need for the nether core of the magic web. So, we must find Laputa, the city of the sky, and study the flying stone. Hermione said, after going back, we can build a floating magic tower that belongs to us. As long as we have this magic tower, we can guarantee that after seeing the mysterious man, he can be completely eliminated, so that he has no possibility of escape.